Tonight, the Harley Quinn writing team shows off their chops by having Harley Quinn go out to the West Coast, unlike last week's special where Harley Quinn headed out to the West Coast. Secret 6 introduces the Riddler's new sidekick, the Punster. Don't get attached to him. And Wonder Woman directly references Arkham Knight for the PS4, thus completely destroying continuity and blurring the lines of reality as we know it. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 211 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and I'm going to keep this one real short. I didn't mean for this episode to be long, but turns out I just had a lot to say about almost every comic that came out this week. So, whoopsie, it's a longer episode than usual. It won't be like ridiculously long, but the longer I talk here, the longer it'll be. So let me just tell you the comics that we got coming out and we'll just jump right into that. So in alphabetical order, we have Bizarro, Black Canary, Constantine the Hellblazer, Dr. Fate, Doomed, Green Lantern Corps, The Lost Army, Harley Quinn, Martian Manhunter, Prez, Robin Son of Batman, Secret 6, Superman / Wonder Woman, and then just Wonder Woman. So all that is coming out. I don't think there's any real big event stuff unless you count any release of a Prez issue as an event, which I most certainly do. All hail Prez, best series ever. Beyond that, yeah, really don't have anything else to say. So we'll just run right into the series proper with, I don't know, whatever. Robin, Son of Batman, number 4, written and art by Patrick Gleason. So last issue we had nobody officially joining the team, which causes Deathstroke to not be so fond of the fact that nobody has dropped out of the Assassin game. We pick up this issue with another flashback. Damian has just completed some mission over in Egypt, and he's meeting up with some sort of helper, teacher, someone who's basically telling Damian, look, you did good. I'll take these trinkets and whatever back to the Al Ghuls and tell them you've completed your mission, but you just stay here and rest. We're on a beautiful vista mountainside. Just work on your art, your painting. And so Damian relaxes and works on the painting. The helper guy goes into the Al Ghul, I don't know, city, whatever you want to call it, the temple, and he accidentally witnesses Ra's al Ghul doing something weird with a skull full of blood, just dripping it down his face. So Damian is escorted over. We see this guy is all chained up, about to be blinded because he saw something he was not allowed to do. And Talia tells Damian, hey, if you like this guy so much, if you want to spare him his punishment, you would have to take it on yourself. That is the cost of this. That is your right to do if you so choose. And the guy's just like, oh, please forgive me, my lord. And Damian just calls him a fool. And then they blow some dust in his eyes and he goes blind. Cut to now, we see the guy is feeling one of the paintings Damian made, and he says that it's beautiful, and Damian just looks back all sad and leaves him behind on the island. So we get them flying off, ninjas, stuff like that. It's just a generic sort of fight scene. And as they drop down in, they give Goliath a big bag full of crabs to eat because that's the only food they have. And I swear to God, I have never seen so much text on one page without it not seeming like it was a joke. It's so in-depth, and it's basically just Damian explaining to nobody that there was this was a temple around Alexandria, that there was a guy who was opening some sort of clinic here, and as long as patients were brought here, it seemed like they all got healthy, and they thought that, great, that's awesome, fantastic. But then Damian went in and stole one of their sacred objects, which had to do with some Egyptian pharaohs or something, and at that point they said the place was desecrated and there's no way that they could ever come back there, and the whole thing fell apart. And nobody calls out to Damian like, okay, so you put the stuff back, but that's not going to like fix the clinic, like that's still screwed. And Damien's like, okay, and I'm also going to donate $5 million. They're happy. And she's like, yeah, all right, whatever. So at that point, Goliath comes crashing in through the ceiling because they've descended deep down, practically under the ocean or under the sea at this point. There is like a bunch of windows showing the seafloor bed. And Goliath comes down and Damien tells nobody, you help him get all these crabs that are snip-snapping at him. I'm going to go and leap through this Indiana Jones style booby-trapped run to put back these Egyptian things where they need to be. You help Goliath and then set up the money transfer. So she's on the computer that is down there because the clinic was down there and starts trying to set up the money transfer when all of a sudden she hears the name Nobody and then a grenade is dropped right into her hands. It explodes, but it turns out it's just a paint grenade, so her invisibility does not work anymore, and Deathstroke drops in being like, haha, I warned you not to have me come looking for you, and now I've got you here, I've got you all tied up, and you're not Henry Ducard. Who the hell are you? You're a girl. What the hell is this? And he quickly deduces you must be the daughter. Well, do you guys have like a club or something? All the daughters of assassins? What's going on here? And at that point, Goliath jumps in, tries saving her, fights against Deathstroke a little bit. He begins shooting at Goliath, to which point Nobody is like, hey, cut it out. He didn't do anything to bother you. And Deathstroke's like, oh, cool. Thanks for letting me know what your pressure point is. Now I can get like even more involved here. And that's where Damien jumps back into the fray, starts kicking Deathstroke in the face. They end up shooting one of the walls that has like the seafloor bed on the other side, and it isn't totally broken yet, but it isn't going to stay up for much longer. So Damien leads Deathstroke into the booby trap room. He knows it all by heart. He figured out all the patterns and everything, and he still remembers how to do it. Deathstroke, however, not so lucky. He gets attacked by quite a few of the things. But as they make their way deeper into the room, he leaves Deathstroke into a pit of snakes, and then he's like, this isn't over. And by the way, he just yells, rah, like 4 different times over the course of this issue. But Damien grapples out of there, and he's like, rah, I'm coming for you. And there's no time in between. He just gets up out of the pit of snakes and just like, all right, fine, whatever, you. And he does a whole metaphor about the pain train is coming, and he's going to punch their tickets. And as Nobody and Goliath ready up for a fight, Damien's just like, here's your bank routing number. I memorized it. I looked over the Justice League files. I've also noticed there's a pattern of you trying to build up some money right now. So how much is it going to cost for you to forget about the Nobody thing? And Nobody's like, what are you doing, man? And Deathstroke just looks at him and goes like, $5 million. Damien goes, deal. And that's it. Deathstroke's just like, all right, cool. We're square. I'm out. By the way, Nobody, I don't know who killed your father, but you should absolutely seek revenge and stop at nothing until you kill that person, because that's just good business. Anyway, it flips her over a thumb drive. I'm out. And so he bails. Nobody chastises Damien because that money is, of course, supposed to go to restarting the clinic. And he's like, whatever, I'll figure out something like that, but we have to hurry. And turns out that once he put the relics back in their place, it opened up a secret passage. And he's like, I think I have an idea as to why this clinic was so successful, but I have to know. It's the most innermost passage of this place. And as he walks down into the inner secret passage, it turns out this entire facility was built around a Lazarus pit. And that's where we leave off. So no, it's a real quick issue. It does, except for that one page. Dear Lord, there is so like they go on a whole thing about like, yes, it was the city of Alexandria, named after Alexander the Great, of which I am also named after. I'm like, what are we doing here, man? My eyes went cross-eyed as I was trying to read this page. But the rest of it's great. I really don't have any other issue with the rest of it. So I guess I'll say this one is probably like a 7 for me. It's a little uneven in quality, but it is still very good in general. So the only thing that I would chastise a little bit is, like I said, a little overwritten in parts, but the fight scenes, and I really like the intro. I like the bit where someone was kind to Damien, and he was just such a little prick that he just couldn't get over himself and let that guy get blind. And it really lets the remorse show when he's coming back for him later. And it shows that like there's some stuff you can't undo. There's lasting consequences, even if you try to make up for it later. So, yeah, I'll give it a 7. It's very well done. Like it. Looking forward to the next one. Prez number 4, written by Mark Russell, art by Dominike Stanton. And honestly, I'll just say up front, if I had not known that it was a different artist, I would not have been able to tell. The style is practically identical. So we open up in the Mexican-U.S. border, and we see that there's a whole bunch of armed sentries there, but a truck is just transporting some goods from a factory on one side, on the Mexico side, into the other side, and they're saying like, oh, at least 24 illegals are outside the gate, and as soon as the gate opens, the sentries just straight up murder all the people trying to make their way through alongside with the truck. So that happens. We then cut to Beth inside of the presidential motorcade, and she's getting the walkthrough saying like, all right, there's an app that converts your phone into a taser. Any appliance with a microchip can actually be a taser, so that's neat. They point out that she's got the nuclear football guy who's just constantly with her all the time, and she's like, I don't think I like that. That seems a little bit much. To which point, Prez Rickard is just like, well, you can get an app on your phone to activate it as well, but be careful because it looks awfully similar to Tinder. And then they go over a bump and Beth freaks out because it's like, oh God, the nuclear football. So Rickard basically says, look, the next course of action is you need to pick someone to be your chief of staff. It needs to be someone who you can't BS, who is going to see through all of your stuff and will keep you in line. And so we cut back to the House of Corn Dogs, her previous place of employment. And we see her manager. Oh, by the way, they have a thing on here that this is the 10-year anniversary of the social network wars, with the winner being Twitter and 10 million people dead. So at least something didn't come to pass. But we get Beth basically breaking into the video feed of her manager's office and saying like, hey, can you give me my last paycheck? I don't get paid as president until the end of the month. And the manager's like, did you turn in your uniform? She's like, yes. How about the hat? But I like the hat. Well, you either get the money or you get the hat. It's up to you. She's like, all right, fine. By the way, will you be my chief of staff? And she's like, yeah, sure, why not? So then we cut to a U.S. embassy in Pakistan where we see, they're called beanbag hunters or beanbag soldiers or something like that. It's just basically drone pilots. And we see them talking, saying like, oh man, I've had the high score all week, and this is crazy to me that I was once working on the border and all that. And then one of the guy points over and says, you got to run her towards the embassy. And they just open fire and destroy this guy. And then the manager in the like back office where they're just playing on Xbox controllers is like, hey, no Cool Ranch Doritos around the controllers. And as he's bitching to the manager, we see that the runner that he shot down was actually just a kid going after his soccer ball. So that comes back. We then go to the inaugural party where a bunch of people are just enjoying themselves. Beth is talking to Senator Thorne, and Thorne's just like, hey, 4 years of political irrelevancy. Like, who cares? You're here, whatever. And she's like, why do you dislike me so much? And also, why do you hate Rickard so much as my vice president? And it's like, well, it's because it's something that you're not going to see in the news, and we don't get a direct answer for that. So we then see that the kid who was shot in Pakistan, turns out that it was recorded by some guy who was waiting for the bus. And the news reporter is like, the horrific footage came in from Pakistan. The traitor has been arrested. That's right, the guy who filmed it, because that's super illegal to film these things. And he's like, I was just waiting for the bus. I don't know what's happening here. And then immediately all the panels are like, what kind of kid's allowed to run in the street? That sounds like bad parenting to me. That's the real problem. But Beth catches the news report and sees the kid dying, and also like the crying mother blaming America. And she's just like, man, I've seen this before, but this is the first time that it's on me. That is my fault. And then we get the story of Fred Wayne. Who is Fred Wayne? Fred Wayne is a billionaire in the future. Turns out that he came up with something called the Wayne algorithm, which is a word generator that did all of the copyrights for like everything that could ever be said or written or thought of. And he just copywrote all of it. And now he owns like all of these screenplays and all this other stuff, and he owns the state of Delaware because why not? And we see that the pork farm bill that was put through before, Wayne sees that and he's like, oh, I grew up next to a pig farm. The smell was horrendous. I hated every moment of it. It was awful. And then we cut to the Academy Awards, and we see that in the category for best screenplay is Fred Wayne, Charlie Kaufman, and Fred Wayne. And when you know it, Fred Wayne wins. So we see him flying over the state of Kentucky, and he lands next to a large mansion and says, hey, there's a piece of property I want to buy. Make sure you land there. So we get back to that, but first we go to the White House Theater screening room where they're watching a trailer for Night Justice, where it's just a guy who beats up criminals constantly. He's like a Batman Midnighter stand-in, and he's like, oh, when the society is boiling over, when the steam of crime threatens to blow the lid, you have to clamp it down harder. And then someone's like, or you could just turn down the heat. He's like, clamp it down harder. So we see the movie starts, and it's some kids playing on the beach out in the sand, and immediately Beth has a flashback PTSD thing to seeing the kid in Pakistan die, and she has to run out because she's just so upset about it. We then cut to the guy who was recording the footage. He's in Guantanamo Bay, and as he's in his cell and he's about to be beaten up by a bunch of his cellmates because they think that he's a plant by the U.S. government, he's like, no, I was just waiting for the bus. I don't know what to tell you. He's then escorted out of his cell, and they chastise him for being Muslim, and then whoever's running the place is like, oh, well, we'll begin the torture. Soldier, could you help out here? And the soldier's like, oh, I'm sworn by my oath not to torture. And he's like, oh, that's cool. No problem. We'll just hire a contractor. It's fine. So then we go over to a laboratory that is making sentries, and he's talking to Senator Thorne, and he's just like, hey, look, we all hate the fact that we have to have people in beanbags piloting the drones. You introduce human error there, it all gets to be chaotic. That's what we saw in Pakistan. What we're introducing here is a fully AI murder bot, and it's called War Beast. And Senator Thorne's like, I love it so much. It's perfect. Oh, God, I need it so much. And we have him do a demonstration. We see that the Guantanamo Bay prisoners, including our dude who was just recording the footage, they're all just set free and just like, all right, you're free to go on, get out of here. And they're like, we're in the middle of a bay, what do you do? And then immediately War Beast comes in, starts chopping off heads and just killing every last one of them. And Thorne's like, you complete me. I love you so much, War Beast. So at that point, they're drinking champagne, saying like, yep, this is perfect, it's going to be great, and like, with all the money we save on labor, we could fight 100 wars at once. And they turn back to War Beast, and War Beast, as an AI, has finished his updates on vitals and stuff like that, and then he starts downloading movies. And it turns out that he's watching 7 Brides for 7 Brothers, to which point Thorne's like, whatever, he did his job, he deserves a little movie downtime. So we then cut back to the Kentucky senator who funded the pork bill. He's on the phone with the pork industry, and then all of a sudden there's a loud noise outside his house, and it turns out it's Fred Wayne. And Fred's like, oh, hey, Senator, I bought this property next to your house, and I'm building a hog farm, which is allowed by your new act. Also, this is where all the shit's gonna go. This is the fecal reservoir, and let me tell you, it's gonna smell something fierce. And he lights up a sign that's supposed to say, welcome to Hello Farms, and it just burns out at the O, so it's welcome to hell. We then just get a little glimpse over to these beanbag sentry workers, and they're protecting a giant silo of wheat that is in the middle of Liberia with a bunch of hungry people just standing around saying like, oh, I haven't eaten in 3 days and all that food's up there. And the manager comes in and chastises the gamer guy and says like, hey, seriously, no more Doritos, and he like pulls it away, to which the gamer throws a hissy fit, blows up the entire wheat silo in front of these people, and just storms out of the room. So we see the senator, Beth, they're all having a sit down, doing a talk, and Senator's just like, hey, have I got news for you, President Beth? And she's like, I've got news as well. I think we should cut down on sentries. I think our presence is too strong. We need to shut it down entirely. To which point Thorne is like, you're an idiot. The only way that we stay and maintain our global dominance is through sheer force and like having all this. And Beth is like, okay, but I've looked through the documents, and like this kind of killing of civilians happens a lot, and we don't even tell the public about it. And Senator's just like, yeah, well, the public doesn't even know. They're idiots. Who cares? So we see Beth turns to Gregor and is basically just like, look, he's right that the insurgents pose a threat, and the best way to deal with that is to project strength. And Thorne's like, yes, see, listen to your advisors. That's perfect. That's what they're saying. But then he brings up the idea of ants, where ants will just follow each other in a line. They'll follow whoever's in front. But if an ant ends up looping back onto the same line of ants, then they just follow each other forever until they all die. And that's what he equates to this idea of showing strength, is that it's just an endless cycle that will end up with all of them dying. And the senator starts freaking out. He's just like, oh, great, 100 years of military dominance ruined by Punky Brewster here. And she's like, who the hell's Punky Brewster? So he storms out super pissed off and saying, like, you're going to be politically irrelevant if you ever do this. You're never going to win re-election. She's like, I thought I was already politically irrelevant. And so as they're storming out, Gregor, the advisor, is just like, look, nobody remembers or cares about who won these wars in the end. They only care about what came out of it. Like, World War I created the Nazis. World War II created atomic warfare. It's all about what's going to lead into the next war. And whatever is going on right now, we may have already created whatever's going to be our doom moving forward. And we see War Beast has escaped containment and is exiting the facility that he was housed in. So, yep, that's that. It's another great issue. I love it. I will say, I think that the Beth stuff is probably at its weakest here. I love most everything in every other issue that we've done so far, but I think where this one really shines is the Fred Wayne stuff. The idea of, you've got this billionaire, he's kind of the equivalent of like a tech startup sort of billionaire, but he's someone who, instead of being just pure evil about all of the pursuits or whatever, he uses his money to basically just get back at the system that he views as flawed. So I love it. Fred Wayne's a great character. No, I will never stop gushing about this series. It breaks my heart that I'm more than halfway done now, and it's an 8.5. I love this. It's so good. So check out Prez if you haven't, and always try to get DC to make more. Wonder Woman number 44, written by Meredith Finch, art by David Finch. So last issue we had Wonder Woman got struck down by Aegis's arrow, and she doesn't seem to be doing so hot. So this issue picks up with her unconscious in an alleyway. A woman comes up and is just like, oh dear, are you all right? I'll get you to a doctor. We need to take a look at you. And Wonder Woman stirs and she's like, nah, I'm cool. I heal really fast. Don't worry about it. I'm set. She's like, bro, you got an arrow in like your heart area. That's a problem. She's like, nah, thank you, bye. And she flies off. And as she's flying over London, she's like, all right, just got to take this out. 1, 2, 3, and rips it out, casts it down to the ground. But before it hits the ground, a portal opens up and it goes through the portal. We'll get to that. So we then cut to many months earlier. We get the intermediate backstory of Aegis, because remember that his mom died, left him a coin, and said, you're descended from a god. This picks up after that, where he's getting his car towed, and the guy says, like, oh, Mr. Chowdhury, you're not behind on your payments for months. We're repossessing the car. And he's like, oh, there must be some mistake. And then he goes to a coffee shop, and his credit card gets cut up, and he's like, oh, Mr. Chang, ? And then he goes to his hotel, and I got to call out this panel. He goes to his hotel after that day and he says, finally, 10 minutes of Arkham Knight on the PS4 and I'll forget this day ever happened. I don't want to try to evaluate the in-universe implications, the fact that the PS4 with Arkham Knight exists on it, because that just throws everything out of whack. But he's kicked out of his hotel room because, once again, using a different fake name, his credit card was also failing. So as he goes down the street, he meets up with a gang in an alley, and the gang is like, hey, Aegis, yeah, we know your real name because you gave our boss a bunch of credit cards and none of those numbers are working, so you owe us a bunch of money. And it seems like he just gets the crap kicked out of him, and then he looks at his magic coin, just being like, Mom gave you this coin, I guess I better see what it's all about. And then fast forward to him looking out in the ocean and talking to Poseidon or whatever. So we see Wonder Woman gets her way back home, just being like, yeah, all right, I'm almost pretty much healed back up, but like, I don't know what's more concerning here. Like, the fact that Aegis almost killed me, the fact that the Fates have been killed, and like, how does Donna tie into all that? And honestly, I'm so exhausted, I can't even begin to think of it. So she goes, she takes a shower. As she gets out, she's brushing her teeth. She's like, man, Donna, why'd you do it? Why'd you kill the Fates? And then Hera appears in the mirror, just being like, I warned you, Donna's absolutely a freak like that. And Diana freaks out like, yo, what's up? What? Just call me to come back to Olympus. Don't appear in my bathroom. That's creepy. And she's like, look, I didn't have time for that. We have serious problems. The Fates are dead. And one of them's like, I know. I literally saw them. That's kind of what I'm dealing with right now. It's like, yeah. But here's the deal. That sends shockwaves through Olympus, because once people stopped believing in the gods, the only thing that was kind of keeping us immortal as gods were the Fates. Like, they lived, they did their thing, and like, we got vulnerable. That's why you were able to kill Ares, but we were still technically immortal. However, with the Fates gone, if we leave Olympus, we're 100% mortal. Like, we can't do anything. We're basically just normal people. You're a god now. You need to make your ass back to Olympus so that way you don't get killed. And she's like, no, I live in London. I'm just going to keep doing that. And I got to find Donna. Like, that's still my number one thing right now. Besides, is Olympus safe? Considering that I don't know who has sent Aegis to kill me. I mean, there was a whole arrow thing. That was like a god-killing thing. To which point Hera's like, yeah, by the way, I brought Hephaestus because I think Hephaestus might be able to help with that. And he steps up and he's holding the arrow and just like, yeah, Hera collected your arrow and showed it to me. Wanted to point something out. And he literally like reaches through the mirror and is just like, you see this tapered edge here? Yeah, my shop is the only place you can get that. Like, this arrow was absolutely made in my shop. And she's like, so you just made a god-killing arrow and gave it to Aegis? Like, what the hell, man? He's like, no. I made one god-killing item, and that is Deathstroke's sword. By the way, please go read Deathstroke. Or something to that effect in the panel itself. However, I didn't make this, which means somebody has been sneaking into my shop and making weapons, and I'm pissed about that. So we cut to central London, huge crowd. Donna's wearing like full armor and is just walking through like, oh God, there's so many people. I hate this. And they're calling her like freak and weirdo and all that stuff, taking her picture. Eventually she dips off down a side alley and just like, man, this place sucks. I hate it here. The world is like much more miserable than I expected. And then she hears a fight going on of some woman and a guy named Link. And she's like, as strange as this place is, I know an Amazon needs to be able to help her sisters. So she comes in and says like, Link person, you will unhand her and you will leave now. I am Donna Troy and you leave her alone at once. And Link, this guy comes at swinging like a baseball bat. Donna immediately makes short work of him and doesn't like maim him, but punches straight through a concrete wall next to his head and scares him enough that he just runs off. And she helps the girl to her feet, just being like, oh, you are safe. Join me in victory. And she's like, what did you do? And just like, I've saved you. That guy was going to harm you. And she's like, no, like, why do you do something dumb like that? He's just going to come back. Like, he's got a whole problem with being demasculated and all that stuff. The reason I was like crying and screaming is because whenever I turn on the tears, like, that's all he really wants from me. And he always goes easier after that. And Donna's like, that is horrifying. That's the worst thing I've ever heard. Why are you doing, like, don't do that. Has this happened before? And just like, man, you really aren't from around these parts. Yes, this happens pretty frequently. Anyway, I'm getting away from here because after what you just did, he's going to be so pissed off for a few days. I need to lay low. I need to get out of here. And Donna's like, okay, all right. I'm sorry, but be safe. And she just like walks into the middle of the road where this bus is about to mow her down. And we see the girl comes back out and tackles out of the way. And Donna's like, what did you do that for? And she's like, Jesus, man, you really are not from around here. Look, if I got to keep you from getting killed to call it even between us, so be it. Fine. But we got to get you out of those clothes and into something more normal. So come with me. I got a little place near Hyde Park. And they do the fish out of water thing where Donna's like, what is this park and why does it require so many hides? So they take a abandoned tube station into a service area. I guess it's your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles style hideout in the middle of a subway. And we see she's got like some candles, a couch, a few books, stuff like that. And be like, yeah, it's a little place of sanctuary. And Donna asked, like, hey, if you've got this place, why are you bothering with that Link guy? Like, what's the problem? And she says, well, even us sewer rats need protection from the snakes. And Donna's like, snakes? What? What's going on? And she basically says, we've got a deal. I steal for him, and he makes sure that no one else around town is ever going to hurt me. And I only have to deal with him instead. So she goes through her wardrobe, pulls out an outfit, and we get what I feel like is more stereotypical Donna Troy. She's got the jacket and the boots and the white boots and all that. So pretty normal Donna Troy outfit. And yeah, we just cut away from that. We go back up to, I guess, Olympus, where Strife is walking through the halls wearing her Beats headphones, and Wonder Woman's trying to like hide in the shadows, and Strife is like, don't do that. You're not adapted to hide in the shadows. You're way too bright and colorful for that. And she's like, well, maybe I wouldn't have to if I thought that some people weren't after me. Isn't that right, Strife? And Strife is like, what are you talking about? Like, what specifically do you have a problem with here? And it's like, look, why do you hate me so much? Is it because I killed Ares? I loved him too. I didn't want him dead, but like, is that really what it's all about? And Strife is like, ooh, all right, look. Yes, I freed Donna from her cell, so be it. I didn't, like, she wanted out, I let her out. I didn't think it would be that big of a deal for you. And Diana's just like, no, stop it. We all know that you're behind Aegis. We all saw the panel where, like, they specifically said Strife in it, like, 3 issues ago. It's obviously you. He has a Pegasus named Discordia. Unless it's a Discord mod, I'm pretty sure it's you, man. And she's like, how dare you? That you think I would stoop so low to name the Pegasus Discordia? Like, that's too obvious even for me. What the hell is an Aegis anyway? To which point, Aegis shows up and says, you can call me brother if you want, because I'm going to become the new god of war. So yeah, that's the issue. I think it's good. I feel like as I finish reading it, I feel generally satisfied. As I look at the individual plot beats, like Aegis just showing up in Olympus here, and the fact that Donna just, happens upon this person who gives her modern outfit and all that, the individual moments feel just a little bit messy. But collectively on the whole, I feel like the issue was good enough. Like, I don't think that there was any one thing that really pulled me out of it. And I guess what I'm saying is it's more than the sum of its parts. When I look at anything small enough scale, I think that's kind of, really, we want to do that? But like, for the most part, I enjoyed the issue. So I think I'm going to say that this one is probably a... I'll say a 7.5. It's somewhere between a 7 and a 7.5, but I'll round up. I think it's actually probably closer to the 8 than it is the 7. So regardless, I look forward to seeing how the Donna Troy stuff is going to wrap up, because there have been some in-house ads saying that we're getting the Titans Hunt series soon, which I know involves her to some capacity. So we'll see how that manages to turn about as quickly as it can, because as it stands right now, she is a blank slate that knows nothing. Constantine the Hellblazer number 4, written by Ming, Doyle, and James Tynion IV, art by Vanessa Del Rey and Chris Visions. So last issue, we got a bit more into Constantine's history, how he had a little group he was palling around with, and particularly we got introduced to a woman named Veronica, who I guess is dead, but we get a bit more backstory on what happened there. So this issue constantly jumps between the past and the present. I'm kind of going to try to keep it interlaced, but we'll see how that works out. So we cut to the past, where we see Constantine is part of his band, and they're singing out all these shows. They're working in a little bit of magic into the shows as well. And we see that the entire crowd is pretty much like demons. Like, maybe there's the occasional human, but most of them are demons at this point. And Constantine's just talking about, like, we were great. I was crap on vocals. Veronica was crap on backup vocals, but like, we were selling out. We were fantastic. Everything was great, and I loved spending time with her up on that stage. And we were going to take on the world with our music and our magic. It was fantastic. And we cut to present day where Constantine's just drinking himself silly in an album shop. And we do see he picks up an album for Mucous Membrane, which even me not knowing a bunch about Constantine, I know that's his previous band. Guy comes over and tells him like, hey man, you can't drink here. And he's like, screw you. I used to come in here drunk all the time and I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to drink anywhere I damn well please. So back off. And as the guy goes away, Constantine's like, yeah, I'd hit that. You know it. And then all of a sudden we see a ghost show up, and I'll be honest, I don't know who the ghost is here, but one of Constantine's ghosts is like, hey, look, you came here to London to help us. When are you going to do it? Like, when are you going to actually be able to do it? And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, you want me to, hey, tentacle monster, there's a bunch of ghosts right here. You want to come gobble them up? Well, yeah, you come on and get them. And the ghost just flips him off and just being like, oh, whatever. She was just another girl to you. So we get back to the past where they're at a magic show, at least Constantine is, and he's just totally heckling the guy, ruining all of his acts, when all of a sudden Veronica comes up being like, hey, I need to talk to you. And he's like, oh, I signed up to get up there. I'm going to show them some real magic. They're going to blow their minds. And she's like, no, I need to talk to you now. And so she drags him out back and is basically like, look, we're not even like really playing for people anymore and all that. But the biggest thing is I just tried to call home and they don't remember me. Like, all this magic and everything else we're doing here, it's like we're not even a part of this world anymore. We're falling into something else, and I don't want that. I want to be, normal or whatever. And Constantine's like, oh, okay, so you're just the boring type then. You want to bail out just as soon as things get a little bit weird. Fine, whatever, bail out. I don't need you here. So he walks back off inside, and we see that apparently one of the people who plays on stage is a Tana, but we don't get to her quite yet. So we cut to now. He makes his way up theoretically back to the same magic place, and he just barges up on stage, interrupting some guy's act, and just goes out to the crowd drunkenly like, hey, you guys want to see real magic? Of course you don't. You see real magic, your entire world is just shattered. Like, you don't even know what to do with yourself anymore. Like, you see real magic, and all of a sudden all the normality in your life just poof, doesn't work anymore. You can't live a normal life. So yeah, no, you don't want to see some real madness, do you? Do you though? And all of a sudden the ghost shows up. And Constantine's like, ladies and gentlemen, my assistant, a real life ghost. You ever seen a real ghost before? And then a bunch of other Constantine ghosts show up in the sky and just like, hey, check it out. More. I don't have any idea if any of the people in the crowd can see it. But all of a sudden, the tentacle monster shows up and just like, oh, and there's our special guest we've been waiting for. Go ahead, eat up. And we see the monster just absorbs a bunch more of Constantine's ghosts. And people are running, people are scared, so they can at least see that. And Constantine just takes a swig out of the bottle and says, all right, someone find me a waitress. I'm running a bit dry. So we get to the past again. We go to the Wren Library, which I guess is a secret magic library. And Constantine busts down the door to Georgina? I can't remember her exact name, but Georgie's what he calls her. And he just busts down the door and just like, hey, I told Veronica to piss off, and if she wants a normal life, I don't want her back, but I just want to make sure that you got a hold of her, that you're nursing her back to health the way that you always do. And she's like, you suck so much, Constantine, that no, I didn't take her in. I turned her away. And Constantine's like, what? You can't do that. And she's like, of course I can. I am so sick of you guys thinking that you can always just come to me and I'll clean up whatever mess you made, having me as a backup plan. Do you think I like living that way? So no, if she's going to have one foot in the grave because of all this magic or whatever, that's on her. You want to do this, you fix her mess for her, because I'm not going to do it anymore. And all of a sudden this weird little creepy dude shows up behind Constantine and just be like, is there a problem in here? And he's like, Jesus Christ, how did you manage to sneak up on me? That's crazy. So Constantine storms out, and Georgiana apologizes to the creepy dude, who apparently is is her boss. So Constantine makes his way back to the library. He taps the magic secret code or whatever to get into the secret wing of it. And as he makes his way down the stairs, he's just kind of I don't want to say moping, but he's thinking like, yeah, it's all this academic stuff. You can learn magic this way. It is a way of learning these things, but screw that. I learn by going out and doing. I don't want any sort of this common knowledge like that. And he's approached by seemingly the same creepy looking dude before, and just like, oh yes, John Constantine, I remember you. You're the one who stole that girl and you broke Georgiana's heart and all that other stuff. And now you're in a library, so you must be clearly looking for some answers, because that's what libraries are all about. I can help you. I can help you find out what these dark forces are and why you are losing everything. And Constantine's like, I just came in to reminisce. I don't want answers to any. I don't want to know anything. So we cut to the past again, and we see that Constantine is talking with some new buds, a new band, and he's like, hey, I heard about this gig up in Newcastle. It's more magic than we're used to, less music, but like I think we should go do it. And all of a sudden there's a tapping at the door, and we see Victoria's outside, and she is clearly like fading out of this realm of existence, and Constantine just comes out and being like, oh yeah, I thought you would have left the magical life. And she's like, it only got worse. Like, I went to go visit my mom and she just looked right through me. Like, nobody is able to see me. Am I dead already? And Constantine's like, no, you're not dead, but like, you can't go back to a normal life. You can't just undo all of the magic that we've done already together. So if you want to come back, come with me. I'll show you how to really live. That's the only way you're going to be able to do this. And she's like, that's how I got into this mess. I'm not doing that again. You know what? Like, if I'm going to die, like anybody could die at any point. If I'm just going to die, maybe it's my time. Maybe that's what's up. And he basically just says Veronica, and she goes in and says like, look, just hold me and just dance with me for a little bit here. Just before everything went to hell, before you did me wrong and all that. And she comments, is that a tear I see? And he's like, no, I'm not crying. What are you talking about? And she's like, just let me pretend that you're half the man I wanted you to be for just like a moment. And it looks like she fades away just in that moment. So we cut back down to a random street, and Constantine's just yelling out drunkenly for the tentacle monster, saying, all right, you want me? Come here. Come and get me. Finish me off. That's the least you could do. Let's do this. And the tentacle monster gets right up in John's face, wraps him up in some tentacles, and there's this loud moaning, screeching noise, to which it eventually evolves and turns into the word John, and Constantine recognizes it's Veronica. So, whoops. Seems she may have ended up a little bit worse for wear. No, I really like this one. It honestly, it hits on a lot of like Vertigo feeling for me. Not, the feeling of Vertigo, but the imprint line. Because there's a few pages that, as far as I could tell, don't forward the narrative. Like, they have little shots or whatever like that, but it's kind of just a collage sort of art piece. And there's this slow degradation where the first one is more upbeat and cheery at the beginning of the issue, and by the time you get to the end, it's very torn apart and dark. And there's like, those fridge magnets that have like words and then like little pieces of words to modify them, and you can make them spell whatever. It's got that all over the front, very collage style. It works. It's a very solid art piece, and obviously this forwards the story in the idea of, we now know the tentacle monster may be Veronica, but at the same time, we also know that Constantine has a bit more depth with how he let her die, how it's this idea of basically my way or the highway, and she just didn't want to go along with that. So overall, I mean, it's a really, really solid issue. I think I'm going to give this one an 8. It's very well done. Super into it. The only thing I could have possibly asked for is just a little bit more story progression, but to have this much character development either way, I'm really impressed with it. So yeah, check it out. Green Lantern Corps Lost Army number 4, written by Cullen, Bunn, art by Javier Piña. So last issue, we met up with Relic, and Relic introduced a whole bunch of other stuff, but they went and fought some space pirates, which are able to drain the light out of their rings at alarming speeds, ending up with Aricia choking out in space. So we pick up with that. John Stewart immediately flies over and is like, ring! give her some life support. Do what you can. Help her out. And so he makes a full med pod out of Green Lantern constructs, being like, all right, look, we're fighting a losing battle here, guys. Because as he's making this pod, the ring levels are like 50%, 40%, 30%. We see Guy Gardner and 02 are kiting a few of the space pirates along, letting them like collide with some weapons and stuff like that. So they're managing to do something, but every time they get too close to them, all of a sudden their rings start getting zapped, and it is incredibly swift in how it does it. So at that point, John Stewart's like, okay, we're not going to make it. We got to retreat. Everybody fall back, get back to Relic's ship. And then they look over at Relic's ship, and it's being blasted by the space pirates anyway. Krona's inside just being like, hey, they're going to rip this ship apart. Like, what are we going to do? And Relic's like, oh, our shields will hold us together, but like barely for long enough. And Krona's like, well, then get us out of here. So Relic just turns on the ship's engines and bails. And 02's like, oh my God, they're leaving. And Kilowog's is like, well, I mean, like, take a look. They're doing the smart thing. They totally would have been killed otherwise. But also, we are now in a worse position. So yeah, we're kind of screwed. And we see everyone's rings tick down to 0. All of their little auras to keep them from dying in the vacuum of space conk out, and it's just darkness. And we cut back to another one of the John Stewart flashbacks. He's dragging along his fellow soldier who's been very heavily wounded. They've got another one, or he's got another one who's like, we gotta bail on this guy, man. He is dead weight and we are not going to make it through. We're open in a field of flowers. They can see us from a mile away. And John's like, I'm not giving up on him. And the guy who's all bloody is just like, you should probably give up on me. I'm not going to make it out of this. He's like, no, shut up. We're not doing that. So as he keeps on getting chastised by the other soldier, John tells him, stow it. Look, I'm running on empty. I don't have much more I could do here. And we see a few more hostiles show up through the field. They've got their guns drawn. His fellow soldier tries to hold them off, but is immediately blown away, just shots through the neck and chest. And John just drops his gun and says, like, look, I surrender. Just get this guy medical attention. That's all we need. And he gets knocked out by one of the insurgents. So cut back to a holding cell, and John is woken up by Salak, however you want to pronounce it. And he's actually speaking English to John. And John's like, wait a minute, hold on. You sound different. You sound funny. And Salak points out, yeah, look, usually the ring does the translation. But because I'm Salak, I actually took the time to learn English. And so this is my like normal voice of speaking to you. And they look around, and there's like a few other lanterns inside this cell. However, there's also a few like lightsmiths from this universe as well. And John's like, okay, look, Salak, where are we? And Salak's like, that's really complicated. And John says, no, I know all the stuff about being in the previous reality and all that stuff. You don't got to say that. And Salak's like, I'm sorry, what? And he's like, okay, more specifically, where are we like right now, building wise? And he's like, oh, well, this is like a prison. It's a thing, and we're slowly being executed one by one. And John looks out through the cell doors. He sees hundreds of other cells all in like a cylinder shape. And it's like, look, they wanted to steal our weapons. Why bring us back? Why are we prisoners? It doesn't make any sense. And Salak is like, well, I can't be sure, but take a look at that. And we see one of the fellow lanterns. His name is Nemux. He is being brought into the center of this place, and it seems like the light is being drained out of him. And Salak says, look, we all know that the light spectrum is the emotional spectrum, and therefore emotion needs life. So these people, and whoever our prisoner or our executioners are, they are taking the life and turning it into light. God only knows how, but it ends up killing Nemux. And we see a couple of the other lanterns are watching from a nearby cell, and they're upset by seeing one of their fellow lanterns die. And then up steps Bij, how you want to pronounce it, a little squirrel chipmunk looking one. And he just starts squeaking and cheeping away, and the other lanterns are like, we don't have our rings, man. We don't know what you're saying. The one who's a empath, can you like empath into him to be no squirrel? And he's like, nah, there's sadness in the area, so I don't want to turn on my powers because it's real doom and gloom out there, so not going to do that. But Bidge goes over to the wall of the cell, pulls off an itty-bitty little panel big enough for him to squeeze through, and I think it's Aricia. It's just like, great, cool, do that. Go find help. Good luck. So then we cut over to Guy and Kilowog's cell, where they are fighting off a bunch of indigenous lightsmiths of the universe, and they're basically just arguing because Guy is still super upset that John is not putting in any thought to the idea that maybe this universe doesn't need to die. Like, maybe this universe can continue to live if we just tell them, hey, stop using up all the light because it'll, end up dying and all that. Maybe we can actually do something there. And Kilowog's like, okay, but like that's dooming us and our entire universe, which has an equal right to live. So how do we square that one? And I mean, they don't really come to an answer, but they continue to fight side by side, taking out the rest of the lightsmiths. So there's that. So at that point, Slack is talking to John, and Slack's like, yeah, look, we had a lot more lanterns in here. And like one by one, they started disappearing. We also had a thing chasing after us in space. We called them scrubbers. And John's like, yeah, we called those cleaners. But yeah, it's because we don't belong in this universe. It seems to be the big thing there. And John's like, look, I don't know what's going on in this universe, but it seems very chaotic. They're all scrambling and trying to be the ones that control the light. To which Selact's like, didn't we do a whole arc where that was a thing as well? Like, we did that. Like, is it really any different from us? And at that point, Bidge pops out of the wall, and he's like, hey, squeak squeaking. And Selact's like, yes, I have also kind of learned his language. I'll piece it together. And they talk for a second, and he's like, yeah, okay, Bidge knows where the rings are and also where a couple other lanterns are, about like 24, and he might be able to get that all together. And John's like, cool, get the rings, but also get these lightsmiths their weapons, the big like spears and stuff like that. Go get those. And John stands up all big and proud, and he's like, I know nobody in this room can understand what I'm saying except for Selak. So like, it's more about giving the image of strength. And he stands up all straight and is just like, everyone get ready. We're going to take these guys out, and we're more than just light wielders, and we're going to teach these pirates a lesson. And he basically says, the Green Lanterns are here now, and we're going to die fighting. So, yeah, there's that. By the way, I looked at the cover for the next issue. Oof, they did Bidge dirty. He does not look good. Yeah, no, it's a good transition point. I like the idea that, they get captured, and that's how they come up to a bunch of more of the lanterns. We get to see how they're all intermixing there. I don't know how I feel about the idea that you can just drain a certain light or energy or whatever from a living being, because I guess that kind of implies that should be possible in our universe, right? Like, that should be something that carries over, because that's just something inherent to the life itself. Now, maybe that's something where like the technology is lost or whatever, but it feels like it should be something that is more prevalent. So I don't know. It's something that's added onto the lore of like the emotional spectrum that I'm not sure I completely agree with, but setting it in the previous universe kind of gives you an out. So beyond that, having Bidge just squeaking the whole time is hilarious. I love that. And the only thing I would kind of criticize is the idea that Guy is still so anti let's destroy this universe. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'm pro let's destroy the universe, but like I just still feel like it's really out of character for him. Not that I think he would be pro, yeah, let's get out of here at any means necessary, but like, this really does come out of nowhere. And it's weird to me that his only main problem is how John is so cavalier about it. So maybe we'll get a bit more definition on that. I just don't feel like it's there. So I'm going to say this one is... I'll give it the 8. It's barely squeaks up to it, but I do think I really like how Bidge is handled here and the way that they separated out the lanterns, and it gives a very clear path of what they need to do over the next issue or two. So yeah, I'm going to give it the 8. Secret 6, number 6, written by Gail, Simone, art by Tom Derenick. So last issue, we have the Secret 6 meeting up with Riddler. Turns out they were sold out by Big Shot, a.k.a. Ralph Dibny. And there's a whole gang of Riddlers here that are ready to attack the Secret 6. And Yeah, they knock out most everybody. The only ones who are still awake are Strix and Catman. And Riddler's like, look, it's one of you guys stole my diamond. And like, I wanted to give that diamond to Sue Dibney because I wanted to marry her. It would be the greatest wedding ring of all time. And she made me forget about the Riddlers or the riddles for a while. But one of you took it from me and I demand it back. And Catman's like, okay, you set all this up here, but like, we don't have it. Nobody here has it. I don't know what you're looking for here. At least I don't have it. And Riddler's like, well, you know, I've become obsessed with that diamond now, so we're going to keep on firing shots in kneecaps until somebody decides to fess up. And at that point, he says he wants to start with Black Alice, and Big Shot's just like, no, she's just a kid. You promised nobody would get hurt. And he's like, riddle me this. How is a handshake deal like my heart? They're both broken, Mr. Dibney. So in walks one of the Riddler gang who's called the Punster. God, I wish we could have gotten more of that character. But Strix starts writing something down and passes it over to Catman. And Riddler's like, what does it say? What is she writing? What's going on? And just says, should I go or wait for you? And Catman's like, she's asking whether or not she should start killing everybody or wait for us to help with the killing. And Riddler's like, can she do that? And she's like, oh, she's already begun. And we get this beautiful little 5-panel spread of Strix just going through. And before Riddler can like barely react, the entire Riddler gang is dead. Not a single one of them is left alive. And Riddler's like, what the hell is happening? Jesus Christ, get her away from me. I don't want her here anymore. And Strix writes down another note saying like, don't talk about me like I'm not here. And he's just like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. I give up. Jesus. So Catman pulls him up and just starts throwing punches, just being like, what have you ever done with your life, man? You get your fetish for tacky puzzles. Like, your entire damn life is just revolving around a punctuation mark. It's pathetic. And he basically calls him out like, look, it's people like you who make me want to join the good guys. And Riddler's like, well, why haven't you? And he says, I tried going straight once, didn't take. So at that point, Catman threatens Riddler's life, says, like, when is a raven like the Riddler when it bleeds to death after having its throat torn out? Riddler's like, that doesn't even make any sense. That's barely even a riddle. And he's like, tough. And then Sue pulls out a detonator, and Riddler starts laughing, and he's like, oh, what's this? Perhaps maybe the guy who's got a fetish for tacky puzzles and such like that, maybe he's actually managed to plan all of this out and knew all of this would happen to begin with. You're so gullible, Catman. And it turns out that Sue is in on the whole thing. She doesn't remember anything about Ralph, about Big Shot, anything like that. And she is actually all in on Riddler. So Riddler takes the opportunity to start beating the crap out of Catman with his Riddler cane. Strix is about to jump in to cause some more damage and just like, we will be having a wedding today. So one of you needs to tell me where the diamond is. And Ralph tries to talk to Sue, just being like, hey, look, I blame myself for everything that happened. I should have stretched further to catch you, but like, you can't be doing this, Sue. And Sue's like, I don't know you, man. I don't want to know you. This is my life. I'm with Edward. This is fantastic. So we see at that point, Ferdy wakes up, the puppet of Ventriloquist, because I guess the puppet was knocked out somehow beforehand. And as Ralph continues to blame himself, Porcelain also wakes up. And Porcelain, Strix, and Catman are like, all right, let's do this Big Shot. Let's jump in. We're going to beat the crap out of your wife so she drops the detonator. And his head just turns 180 degrees around his neck. It's horrific. And he just goes, no. And they're just like, what do you mean? No? She's going to blow us all up. And then we're all dead. And he's just like, I don't care. You guys get out of here. I'm staying with my wife. And they realize, all right, we got no other options. We're going to have to fight against Big Shot too. So they all launch into a fight against each other. Meanwhile, Ferdy comes in, sneaks behind some boxes, and gets up behind Riddler, ends up stabbing him in the leg with his drill hands. And he's like, look, Riddler, you and I, we're both the crazy weird ones. We understand each other. We got a thing. But here's the thing. All of those other people, the 6 that you collected, they're all innocent. I'm the one who stole the diamond. And he pulls it out of whatever compartment he's got. And he's like, not even the ventriloquist, not even the woman who is my meat puppet. She doesn't even know about this. It's just me. I'm the only one who knew. Whack, whack, whack. So The fight's continuing on. They're all trying to take down Big Shot. And then in comes Black Alice. She has copied the powers of Black Orchid, which is basically magic. And she's like, yeah, I can do all that. You all get away from each other now. And we see, as they're doing all this, Susan pulls the trigger. Sue Dibney pulls the trigger, and then that's the end of it. So they all jump off the dock as fast as humanly possible. And as they're looking on at it, we see Black Orchid manage to save Ventriloquist because she was still technically passed out during all that. Everyone else swims over onto some rocky shore, and basically Ralph is like, look, I'm sorry about that whole thing. It's, I said a lot of stuff during the fight, because he was basically just talking about saying like, yeah, you're all strays. I collected you because you've never been shown any affection in your entire life, and I knew I could manipulate that or whatever. But he apologizes, and Strix is like, hey, do you still love her? And he's just like, yeah, of course I love her. Like, you don't understand what it's like to be that close to someone that amazing. You never let it go. It's always going to be there. And Ferdy swims to shore. Turns out he dropped the diamond somewhere in the ocean, so womp, womp, womp. That's there as well. And as they get up onto the shore, it's like, okay, well, forget the Riddler. We just got to focus on Sue. And Big Shot turns to Black Alice and is like, hey, look, Alice, can you... And she passes out. She just collapses. And she says that she sees the Spectre calling her. And Big Shot starts freaking out because she ain't breathing. She's like, seems like she's dead. So that's where the trade ends. That's the end of that. I guess I kind of expected the arc to be over here. I guess I kind of expected, like, okay, we're done. Like, we have our confrontation with the Riddler. It's revealed who took the diamond, which it was. And then we beat him. And that's the end of it. But it turns out that no, we are going for this larger story arc where Sue, quote unquote, may be the actual villain, or is someone who at least has to have her memory redeemed to some extent. It's not that I think it's bad that we're continuing on with this arc, but it does feel... It feels like we haven't made a lot of forward progress, because it led us to believe that one specific thing was going to be the ending, and now it's revealed that it's this other thing. I don't know. It's hard to explain, because obviously forward progress has been made. It's just unsatisfying, I guess is the word I'm looking for. It's leaving me with this feeling like this arc will never end. This is just going to be something where we can keep kicking the can down the road. And part of that is, this book has had delays between issue 2 and 3. I feel like this has been going on forever, and we're still not just done with it. So it's a lot of contributing factors. I do think this issue is okay. I would say it's probably sitting around just maybe like a 6.5 range for me. It's except for one or two panels, it just feels like we keep on repeating the same sort of stuff of, we're a group of broken people, how are we ever going to get along? And then the issue ends with, oh, turns out that we can be broken together. And nothing wrong with that implicitly for a single issue, but this is like the third time we've got it. So yeah, I'm going to say this is a 6.5, like I said, and I don't know. I guess I could see the back half being a lot better once we find our new voice, once we do something more with it, but I don't know where we go from here that's going to feel ultra satisfying anymore. Harley Quinn number 20, written by Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by John Timms. So last issue, there was a woman who said that her kid was being kept by a cult, and so she was trying to hire a hitman to go out there and save the kid, and Harley said, sure, why not? Where is it? It's in Hollywood. So we open up this issue with a dream sequence. Harley Quinn having a dream sequence? Who would have thought? It's a plane full of superheroes, and Harley's the flight attendant. She ends up talking to Batman, who asks for a coffee, and then she hits him because he didn't say please. And then one by one, she pisses off Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Shazam. And as the whole plane devolves into chaos and fighting, she makes her way up to the pilot's cabin, and inside, the pilot and co-pilot are the Joker and Poison Ivy, to which Joker says, hey, I just proposed to Poison Ivy, isn't that great? And so she goes out on the wing of the plane, Poison Ivy throws the bouquet, and Harley while recognizing she shouldn't jump for it, she does anyway and says, boy, I'm so pathetic. And then we cut to, and it turns out she's actually on a plane, but she's just dreaming, and she's right in the middle seat and messing with both of her people with her. And as she gets off the plane, she makes the comment of, wait a minute, wasn't I just here? And she references that last week we had the Harley Quinn road trip special, which also had her go to the West Coast. So yeah, it is kind of weird that we had that all sandwiched together. But regardless, she waits around the luggage carousel. Turns out that her luggage was lost, and so she's just standing there for a while. She goes to the customer service, and they're like, well, we can't find your bag, so all I can offer you right now is an apology. And she's like, okay, go for it. And he's like, what do you mean go for it? And he's like, well, you said you'd offer an apology. I'm waiting. And she's like, I told you we get you your bags. I'll get you that for you. And, our apologies that you're there. And she's like, right, but you haven't actually said, I'm sorry. Say I'm sorry. And she's like, rolls her eyes, and she's like, oh, we're so sorry, we misplaced your bag. And then she starts getting all pissy with Harley, saying like, man, I've been working for 12 hours straight, you people, you psycho. And Harley just grabs her by the collar, says like, oh, this is bad customer service, ends up beating her up and possibly killing her and throwing her into a open luggage bag. So cutting back over in Brooklyn, we see the nurse talking to Cyborg and or Borgman, and saying like, oh, I hope Harley's up for the task. And he's like, don't worry about it. If anyone is, she is. So as she's leaving work for the day, we see the hitman that she originally was going to hire comes up behind saying like, hey, you can't just call off the deal. You owe me $100,000. And she's like, I don't have it. And I also already sent a new hitman on the way. And he's like, okay, well, who's this new hitman? Because I'll be sure to take care of them. It's a professional discourtesy. And he's like, oh, it was Harley Quinn. The hitman's like, Harley, huh? Well, this is going to be much more interesting. So we cut over to a mansion party that all of the ransom notes had a return address addressed from. She gets in, and there's a butler named Alfred. No connection, I guess, though it looks completely identical. And as she makes her way through, she's looking for a guy, or she's looking for whoever's hosting the party. Turns out it's a guy named Nick. And as she makes her way over to Nick, he is in a hot tub and just like, oh, hey, yeah, that's me. Who are you looking for? It's just like, oh, I'm looking for a girl named Spiro Adaro. And just like, all right, well, let's talk inside. He gets up. He's completely naked. They just make a few jokes about like, oh, I'm going to make a sandwich. Boy, I wish I had pickle, but tis. So as Harley's eating the sandwich, turns out he's not the guy. They're just using his address as a return thing. And it's like, yeah, well, that's not me. I'm not the one who did it. However, I do know that she was here for a party, but now she's probably at the chateau because that's her hangout. So as Harley's eating the sandwich, a bunch of masked men break in with guns who are saying, hey, Nick, who I guess he's a screenwriter or something like that. He's like, hey, Nick, give us all your money. We're robbing you. And Harley just sticks her finger in the barrel of a gun and says like, hey, get out of here. I'm trying to do a job and also enjoying this sandwich. And one of them hits her over the head and says, shut this whore up. And Harley's like, oh, hell no. I don't play nicely with that. So she stabs one guy in the foot, then proceeds to break another one's legs, shoots one of them in the head, and then one of them starts to escape, to which Harley gives chase. As they get out to the street, a cop car that's responding to the incident hits the guy, sends him flying through the air, and he lands on the trident of a statue of Poseidon or something. And the cops are like, oh God, you just killed that guy, freeze or we'll shoot. And she's like, you're the guys who just did it, but fine, whatever. So she gives in. However, turns out that she's able to dislocate her thumb or whatever to get out of the handcuffs, and they also left the keys in the ignition. So she just steals a cop car, goes into town, and then immediately comes across a guy walking on the street dressed as a cowboy. And he gets in the car with no prompting and says, hey, thanks for the ride, officer. Harley says, I'm not an officer, but where are you going to? He doesn't say anything relevant. He says like, oh, I think the attitude of a person really defines the blah, blah, blah. So they just drive around for a while. And then she's like, hey, I got a cop car. You're kind of my sidekick here because you're a cowboy. So do you know where the chateau is? And she's like, yeah, totally. Just turn left up front. So they get to the chateau. They make their way and they find Sparrow Adaro. Turns out that she just faked being kidnapped by a cult in order to try to get the ransom money from her mom because she just wanted a boatload of cash. And she's like, oh, my mom's so stupid. What a dumb bitch like that. I just wanted the money. And then Harley gets the cowboy to shoot her in the foot. So they pick her up, bring her inside. And it turns out that she's also high on like God knows how many drugs. So they bring her to a motel nearby and strap her down and have her watch Spanish soap operas for like 24 hours while she detoxes. At that point, they go into town. We do a whole thing with them going down like the Hollywood Walk of Fame with all the licensed characters that you can take pictures with. And one of them is a Harley who comes up and says like, hi, I'm Harley Quinn, Mr. J, Puddin', all that stuff. And Harley's like, this is in very poor taste, and like I barely ever wear that costume anymore. This doesn't make any sense. And then the fake Harley's like, well, like what are you supposed to be? Because if you're supposed to be Harley, you messed it up entirely. And we see that she knocks her out, sends her into an ambulance. But then she comes across a Wonder Woman cosplayer and just like, oh wow, Wonder Woman, you look awesome. And she starts like semi-flirting with Wonder Woman, to which the Wonder Woman cosplayer is like, it's $200 for an hour, $300 if we have your cowboy friend involved. And then cowboy friend's just like, yeah, that's not a cosplayer. That's illegal. We need to go. So they cut down an alleyway. I don't even know what's happening here. There's a taco truck run by a cat or a cat like costumed thing named Pinky. And it just like all of a sudden shows up. Cowboy and Harley jump to the front line. And by the way, he calls himself the Cowboy. Like there's no other name here. It's just a cowboy. They cut to the front of the line to get themselves some tacos. They go over how Cowboy was trying to be like a movie star, but then ended up falling in the wrong crowd, got arrested on a false and bogus charge. And now that he broke out of jail, he's trying to make things right. And Harley's like, all right, I can respect that. All of a sudden, the Pinky cat sits down and tells Harley that she's in its seat, and they fight for a while. And that's like, she manages to kick the Pinky cat costume out into the middle of the road, of which a Hollywood tour bus is driving by, and just straight up runs over the dude in the cat suit. So they go back to the motel. They meet up with Sparrow. Sparrow's like half asleep in that chair. And as they're talking about what the plans are for tomorrow, there's a knock at the door. Cowboy goes to answer it. He's immediately shot in the chest and killed. And in walks the assassin from the beginning of the issue. It's Deadshot. What do you want me to say? What do you, like, even the thing of what do you want me to say? Like, everything I could possibly say about the Harley Quinn series and its multiple spin-offs, I've said. I've already like, yeah, okay, is the humor for me? No. We keep on introducing all these other characters. We keep introducing tertiary character number 75, who literally is in this for half an issue, and we get a full backstory and a whole thing, and then they're killed, and then we'll never talk about them again. And I'm sure this is for somebody. I'm sure the people who really love Harley Quinn and like this evolution of her character, this is doing wonders for them. But for me, from a writing standpoint, this is the equivalent of like talking to a middle schooler in the early 2010s, late 2000s, where the lull to randoms is just everything. And like, I understand that this is around that time period. So like, it's marketed towards those people. I get it. I understand it. But reading it now, it's just, what are we doing for 20 issues, man? 21. There was a 0 issue. So yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like there's a direction. I don't think that it's supposed to have a direction. I think it is literally just supposed to be a haha, isn't that funny? But like, I'm not laughing. So 5.5. Continue on until the sun explodes. Black Canary number 4, written by Brendan Fletcher, art by Piña Guerra. So last issue we had Ditto was kidnapped, stolen by Bo Maeve, the previous singer for Black Canary's band. And this issue is kind of just a nice little wrap up and a little introduction to Bo, because she is apparently a much more recurring character than I thought. So we get a little bit of her backstory. She's talking to Ditto, holding giving her photos for her self-titled album whenever that's going to come out. And she's like, yeah, I was born to entertain. And whenever this album racks, they're going to know real star power. And Ditto looks up like, what's going on here? And it's like, all right, look, if you don't want to talk, that's fine. But like, how about we go get some ice cream? And I'd love to see Black Canary's face when she realizes that you're gone. And we cut over to Black Canary as she is kicking the crap out of literally anyone who could have any info about Ditto. Get some government agents helping out. Goes up to Kurt and it's just like, tell me, were you part of this? And he's like, I swear to God, I don't know, but I will help you find her. And finally, Heathcliff comes across a shawl that was worn by, Maeve, obviously implicating her to this. And Black Canary's like, all right, fellow bandmates, give me some leads, everything you know about Maeve. Tell me everything. So we see that Maeve is pulled over to a payphone in order to call somebody and doesn't exactly say who it is yet. She says it's top secret and she can't use her cell phone because of that. But she starts like making dance moves and stuff, which Ditto imitates perfectly. And Maeve's like, all right, okay, you know what? We've got some time to kill. Let me tell you about my history, about how I learned to dance. And we see she was a young kid. Her parents encouraged her dancing. She watched a bunch of music videos. Eventually, she felt that she outgrew her small town roots and moved out to try to become the best there ever was. And that's really her entire driving force, is that it's not enough that she is good. She has to be the best. And so she joined in the band and she's like, yeah, these were my friends and they picked me because I was the best. And every time they went out, they absolutely rocked the crowd. It was fantastic. Apparently the name of their band at that point was Alas Insane, ALAS Insane. And she's like, that was a joke that like my dad used behind my back, but like I'm taking it back. I'm making it my own thing. And I want my dad to see this show that I made it in spite of him. And like nothing in the flashback shows that he was anything but super supportive, but she just views him as holding her back the whole time. So we see that they make it back to a motel room and Maeve is up on the bed just doing some dance moves and encourages Ditto to imitate, to which Ditto does absolutely perfectly. And Maeve is like, oh my God, you are like awesome. I would love to keep you around for a little bit longer. So we cut over to Canary. She apparently has gotten a lead from Frankie, who is the tech girl over in Batgirl's book, just cashing in a favor and crossing over with that a little bit. And it turns out they track down to this gas station where she made her payphone call. And Black Canary's like, did you see clerk person, did you see these two people? And just like, I mean, yeah, but like I can't show you the security footage unless I see proper credentials. And Canary's like, look, I don't want to push this too bad. But before she can say anything, she sees someone seems to be carjacking a woman across the street. So Canary just goes out, this guy's throwing punches, and she just super easily sweeps the guy's leg, slaps him across the face, and then punches him and gets the guy over to the woman he was carjacking, being like, this guy would like to say that he's very apologetic for what he'd done, and also he's going to pay for all your gas. And the guy's like, sure. So we go back to Maeve. She's getting a phone call, and she's like, yeah, it's me. Okay, I got her. We can be ready and be there within the hour. So they immediately pack up the bags and make their way out, and Maeve's like, if I didn't have other plans, we could have been awesome together. Like, let me tell you the rest of my story. So we see they're performing some sort of music video, something like that. Maeve's taking center stage, and she's being a total diva. The track isn't lining up right. She's saying that she can't move to this. There's no way she can dance to this track. And the director, producer, whatever, comes out and be like, Maeve, how about we go back into my office and we can talk about this? And they basically just hand her a check and say, your services are no longer required. We don't think this is working out between us. Clearly you're not happy. We're not happy. Let's just go our separate ways. And Maeve rips up the check and just like, as if I would walk away for money. But eventually she goes back and she, she's not going to grovel or anything, but she's like expecting them to take her back. So she goes back to the studio and she sees Dinah taking her place, singing her songs, doing her moves. And she is immediately, not jealous, at least in her words, but she sees that Dinah is not deserving of those things, of her band, of her things. So she pulls out a lighter and sets the set on fire, to which point she goes off and hides in the corner. Everyone else starts shuffling towards the exits. Once Dinah thinks nobody's looking, she uses her sonic scream to put out the fire, and Maeve sees it and is just like, oh, she's got a secret. She's got a secret that now I know. Ho, something that I can take from her. And we see Ditto's watching on in all this as the car is driving down a dark and lonely road and is eventually stopped by some soldiers in cars, blinding headlights. So Maeve gets out, hands over the kid, just being like, yeah, this isn't intimidating at all. That's sarcasm, by the way. To which point, Amanda Waller steps out and says, yeah, we caught the sarcasm. Anyway, hand over the kid. And she also just lists off like a bunch of stuff from Maeve's past, being like, oh yeah, you go by Bo. That's commander in your mother's native tongue, isn't that right? And she's like, yeah, sure, I guess. And Amanda Waller's like, whatever, give us the kid, get in the van, and when you arrive, you'll get your side of the bargain here. And we see Waller, Maeve goes off, Waller takes Ditto and is ready to pack her away, when all of a sudden a ninja comes out, dressed all in white, with a sword, starts slashing at the troops. The soldiers there, she just starts punching them out, no problem. We see that they have blonde hair, blue eyes. It's very coded to be Dinah. It seems like it should be, but she doesn't make any noises, anything like that. And Waller eventually just has her hands on the kid, just being like, all right, let's stop this now. We're not doing this anymore unless you want something to happen to the kid. And the ninja throws the sword right past Waller's head. Waller doesn't flinch, but the sword embeds itself in a tree, causes the tree to fall over, crushing a truck, which I guess distracts Waller just long enough for the ninja to get Ditto out. So we cut back to the motel, and Dinah is upset. The trailer's gone dead at this motel. Frankie's not able to help anymore. And just as Dinah's about to start throwing chairs around the room, Ditto is just standing in the doorway, just smiling like, hey, hi, I'm here. Of course, not saying anything. But Dinah is like, oh my God, how'd you get here? What's going on? This is incredible. And she's so happy. And we get a zoomed out shot to show the ninja looking lady looking down in the motel door from the roof up above. And we get one page last of epilogue of Maeve is now going through some sort of chemical test, something like that, genetic stuff. She gets injected with some sort of serum, and her narration says, I made my choices. They were tough. They may not have been right, but they were my choices. And now I'm going to be better. I'm going to be the absolute best. I'm going to be better than Black Canary. And we see that she's also now got the sonic scream ability. So, yep, get some true little contestant there. I dropped out of Arrow pretty early on, all things considered, probably like season 2.5, 3, somewhere in there. So I know there is some stuff with Black Canary and White Canary. I don't know if that's what this is, but it seems to be hinting that this is someone very close to Dinah, at least in some way. I'm curious to see how we're going to pay it off. As for the Maeve backstory stuff, I mean, if we're using her as the villain, if she's going to be the primary antagonist of this book, I'm fine with giving her some backstory here. It does come across as kind of, I don't want to say bland. The motivation of her wanting to be the best, no matter what, is good motivation. But her entire thing of she grew up in a small town and then she outgrew her roots and blah, blah, blah. None of that is particularly interesting, but it takes up 5 pages of the book. So it's a little iffy on that front, but overall, I did really enjoy the art and the writing of this issue. So I think this one is going to be I'll say a 7.5. It's just not cracking the 8 for me. I don't really know what I would want out of it to get it to the 8. Maybe it is just a limit on how much I really like this book. It is just, I don't know, it's held back in something that I want it to be more than what it is currently. So we'll see, but 7.5 still nothing to sneeze at. Superman Wonder Woman number 21, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Doug Mahnke. So last issue we had Wonder Woman started interrogating all the various people involved in Superman's life, and we were just starting with Lois Lane's interview. But this issue picks up with a totally different person, someone named Mr. Bend. He apparently works to some extent with the president because he says, oh, tell the president I'm going to be late. And then we see he goes down to some secret basement lab or something in his house and pulls up a video feed of Firestorm and starts a seizure protocol, which, whatever that means. So we go over to Firestorm. It's Ronnie and Jason. Ronnie's flying around. Jason's in his head, just like, oh, hey, we got to get to that concert soon. My new girlfriend, she's been dying to see it. And Ronnie's like, yeah, okay, but there's a boat out here, and all these people are just stranded. We need to help them out. So Ronnie's like, look, I don't even need your help. I know how to convert all of the molecules of water into hydrogen, therefore lifting the boat up out of the water, and then I just got to put the people back in the boat. No problem whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, Jason starts dipping out. He just starts like falling to the side, and we see each of the people who were in the water are actually, to some extent, these weird shadow creature things, which, if you've been reading other Superman books around this time, seems familiar. So they start absorbing Firestorm, and it seems like he's just totally taken off the grid. Like, there's nothing to be said there. So then we cut back over to the Wonder Woman interview with Lois Lane. And Lois is basically just chewing apart and saying, like, look, you guys keep on like wondering what my thing with Superman is. Like, that's what we keep dodging around in this. Anytime Superman does anything, it's a headline story. Like, no matter what. And by the way, I am a reporter, so it is my duty and my career to report on that stuff. And just like keeps on going on that. But the person who's doing the interview is like, well, at any time did you know that Clark Kent and Superman were the same before you released the story? And she's like, no, not by any significant margin. Also, reporter. Can I really just stress that idea? And finally, the guy asks, like, did you and Clark Kent ever have a romantic relationship? And Wonder Woman's like, okay, we don't need to be asking these questions. But Lois says, no, we did not. And then she stands up from the chair, and the doctor's just like, please sit down. We have baseline readings we need to do. And she's just like, oh, shut up. I'm gonna look Wonder Woman in the eye as I say this. And then she like pushes the interviewer down at the chair and just talks to Wonder Woman, saying like, look, do you have any more questions? Because I'd like to take this rope off. And Wonder Woman's like, nah, I'm good. And she turns over to Glass and just be like, there, she answered all the questions along with everybody else. Nobody has any secret plots with Superman to conspire against the country. Can we please just let them leave now? And then all of a sudden, an alarm goes off, and then Superman comes busting in through the wall. And he's like, Diana, what the hell are you doing here? How did you find out where they were? And what are you doing? And then, like, Wonder Woman still got Lois in the ropes, and she's like, I know this looks bad, but I promise you there's a good reason. And he's like, yeah, you're right, it doesn't look good, but like, what's up? Why are you here? And she explains that Steve Trevor informed her that these were the coordinates, and she would just be able to convince these people to put on the lasso of truth and give their honest confessions that they would all be let go free. And Wonder Woman's like, that seemed like the most obvious and easiest answer to get them out. I was just trying to help. And then Superman confesses like, well, Trevor gave me these coordinates after the president gave the okay, and I was busting through walls to get them out. And Lois is like, sounds like Steve Trevor played you both. And at that point, Superman looks down at the lasso, puts it back in Wonder Woman's hand, and is just like, all right, let's get going. So the doctor interviewer guy leads them down the hallways. There's a few soldiers, but they all stand back because they got Obama's memo. And Wonder Woman and Superman basically have an argument here where Superman said, I told you to stay away from this. I asked you to please not get involved here because it's clearly there's a bunch of stuff going on. And what, did you think I wouldn't be able to persuade the president to do this? And Wonder Woman's like, I was just trying to, like, this seemed like the best angle for me to come at this thing. It wasn't that I thought that you couldn't do it, but why not attack it on two fronts, you know? And she's like, well, I know that you don't like the lasso method. And Superman's like, yeah, I don't like it, and yet you did it anyway. And she's just like, look, I asked them for permission. And Superman says, it doesn't matter. They were trapped in a government facility. They would have said yes to basically anything. This is under duress. You can't take their yes as meaning actual yes there. So at that point, Superman's like, look, as long as was it just Lois? Was that the thing? And she's like, no, I used it on pretty much everybody already. And he's like, oh, great, fantastic, awesome. So he just punches through the last door where everyone else is standing. They all come around. They're like, Superman, Clark, oh, hey, it's great to see you. Oh, cool. Steel takes the little inhibitor chip that was on his forehead and shoves it in the mouth of the guy who was asking the questions. Cat Grant gets real handsy, to which he's just like, thanks, Cat, we got to go. And so as he, one by one, is like apologizing to all the different members of his friends and all that, he looks up in the ceiling and the rafters of this place, and he's like seeing a bunch of his supervillains all in jars, all in stasis, and like, what the hell is this place? And Steel's like, it's a prison for all of your more superpowered criminals. And it's just like, okay, that seems very much like a flawed idea. And then Steel like immediately gets like oh, that's not right. Something the energy fields are being drained, and Superman's like, all right, someone's trying to free them. Everybody leave now. And we see they all drop to the ground. But I don't think that they are them, or they are still unconscious, because the only thing that attacks them are more of these shadow demon things. So Wonder Woman ends up fighting against, I think they're being absorbed into the shadow demons is the thing. So shadow demons take them for their energy, because all of them, they're like Atomic Skull and stuff like that. They're all energy things, live wire. They give out a bunch of power. So they're absorbed by these shadow creatures, and Superman tells Steel, you, Wonder Woman, get all the civilians out of here. I'll take care of these guys, make sure they're safe. So he proceeds to like pull up some concrete and use it as a defensive shield as they're firing off energy blasts. He's ready to fight. Diana sees Steel helping out her and just like, wait a minute, hold on, you left Clark by himself? It's like, yeah, he told me to, and he's Superman. Of course I'm going to listen. So we see Clark is about to get drained into whatever black hole one of the shadow creatures has, and Diana says, hey, bring them out, get everyone out here. And she runs in, grabs hold of Clark's hand at the last second, pulls him back out of the shadow creature. And he's like, what are you doing? I keep on telling you to leave and you keep not listening. And she's like, shut up. So pulls him out. And then all of a sudden, all of Clark's friends and compatriots here all have these laser guns, and they're firing at the shadow creatures, pushing them together, combining them into one, and under their collective mass, they basically just collapse and fuse into a black hole. So they're all gone, and Superman is like, okay, look, I appreciate you guys doing this, but like, I keep on putting people I care about in harm's way, and this is not okay. And Wonder Woman looks at Superman, who's taken on some heavy injuries here, and just being like, hey, you've been hit bad, you need to relax. And he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a Justice League transporter, like garage door clicker. And she's like, why do you have that? And he's like, there's something I got to do. You got to stay here. And she's like, no, I'm coming with you. And Lois steps up being like, and also, Superman, I want to come with, because like, I'm a reporter. And if I can like sway public opinion, if we could just like, you know, take whatever you're doing, we can make it work where people aren't going to hate you anymore. And Superman's like, look, both of you have made decisions, and they may have seemed right for you in the time, and you can justify them all you want. But at the end of the day, you betrayed my trust, and that's not okay. I am fed up with this world. You have all betrayed me. And so he clicks the button, and he teleports out, leaving the two of them behind. So we cut to an epilogue where Obama's talking to that Mr. Ben guy, and it's just like, hey, man, what's this with you? You doing all this stuff with last issue of like attacking Superman without my go-ahead. Not cool. You're out of the club. And he's just like, oh, okay, Mr. President, if that's what you want, I serve at the will of the president. So he's saying like, hey, take me home. He gets back home, but he doesn't go in. He goes instead out to the woods behind his home, climbs into a giant tree trunk that has a portal in the middle of it, and then steps out in a doorway where he meets up with Vandal Savage and Wrath? ? It's people who've shown up in other issues of Superman comics, and we're all setting up for the big crossover event across all three of them. And he's like, oh, seems like I'm not the first one here. So yeah, that's all happening. Okay, it's a fine enough issue. I do think it feels, I don't want to say weird, but it is weird. It's weird that this issue just all of a sudden is saying Clark is like, Wonder Woman, I didn't want you as being a part of this, and yet you did anyway. You've betrayed my trust. And like, on one level, I kind of get it, because Superman is obviously very touchy with the trust stuff nowadays because of after what Lois did. But at the same time, isn't the whole point of this book up until now that like Wonder Woman and Superman come to the terms of like, we don't have to do this alone. Like, despite the fact that we are Superman and Wonder Woman, we can still be stronger together, and we don't have to keep on like martyring ourselves. I feel like we're taking a step back by doing this and like really committing to it, but I don't know. It's in a weird middle position where like I kind of get why Clark would be a little regressive at this point, but it still feels a bit too regressive, especially when you have her doing all of this just in support of him. So the Lois stuff I get, screw her, she's totally messed up. But the Diana stuff, it seems a bit more disingenuous. So beyond that, the rest of the issues, okay. I think I just got a little bit confused with they showed villains and then shadow monsters, and I know it's all set up for this larger arc that's coming up across all 3 books, but I just, art-wise, it wasn't quite conveying to me what I think it should have been. So I'm going to say this one is just I'll say a flat 7. It's just got enough issues that don't keep it in great, but it is still good. It is still a fine enough read. I'm interested in where the story continues, so 7. Dr. Fate number 4, written by Paul Levitz, art by Sonny Liu. So last issue was kind of feeling like the end of the arc. Obviously, there's still more to go on, but it just kind of hit this level where he's starting to accept his role as Dr. Fate. This issue picks up with him at medical school. We see he is at his college, and he's attending a lecture on, honestly, it seems like a very basic course, medicine, genes, and cells. But he's on his computer, Khalid, just looking up how to be Dr. Fate. Let's make it like a PowerPoint and take notes on, like, I should research myths and ask Naboo and, like, pray, maybe. And then as he is paying more attention to his laptop than the actual lesson, we see that the lecturer has called on him and basically is like, hey, look, you're really into your laptop. I would appreciate it if you could at least pretend like you're paying attention to the lecture. And she's like, right, yes, sorry, my bad. Sorry. So he just sits down. And we see he's talking to Sonny later on, and she is just saying, like, look, she wasn't picking on you. It's not because of anything else. You're just being paranoid. And the professor comes up just being like, hey, Khalid, Mr. Nasur. And Khalid points out, I'm not actually going to be using the Nasur name when I become a doctor. I am going to use the name Kent, because Kent apparently runs in my family. We don't get elaboration, but she's like, look, I just wanted to let you know I wasn't picking on you. Like, I would have found somebody who wasn't paying attention, but I just need to kind of like lay that down in class. I hope you didn't take it too personally, but also stay on your toes, because I'm in favor of surprises. And he's like, oh, fantastic. Love that. So we see that she is walking home with Shia and is like, hey, look, I don't know if I can handle everything that's going on with my dad in the hospital and like a bunch of stuff that I can't tell you what's up. And she's like, no, you told me, like, your cat died. And he's like, yeah, no, the cat, that's definitely what I meant. And she's like, look, all of us have to do a bunch of impossible things. You just have to do one more thing than the rest of us. And that sucks, but like, you can do it. And then we see the rain is still coming down. It's coming down heavier. And she's like, well, that's a sign I should get back home. Bye. And Khalid tries to talk to her, but he's just like, you just don't understand. So then we cut over to the dad, who's in the hospital. He's still blind. He's struggling. He's trying to get up out of bed. And it's basically like, look, you have to help me. I have to get a message to my son. It's of utmost urgency. And the nurse there is like, look, we can leave him a call or something. We'll get him the message. It's not like it's the end of the world. Cut to a news program that's talking to some scientist, being like, scientist man, is this the end of the world? And the scientist is like, look, admittedly, we have never seen weather of this intensity for this long, but we are still scientists. We believe that this is something that will pass. Of course, there is already trillions of dollars in damages and many thousands of lives lost. Some small islands have already been flooded to the point of uninhabitability, but like, it ain't the end of the world. And then the reporter's just like, and now we turn to a reverend. Reverend, what do you think? And Reverend's like, it seems pretty end of the world for me. I don't know about you. So we see that Khalid flies back over to the museum that he was at earlier on when he got the helmet. And he's outside and he's like, look, I can't just walk in. I can't break any glass. How do I get in the same way I did before? Do I just... museum, may I enter? And then he just like phases through the glass and he's like, oh, okay, cool, that's how magic works, nice. So turns out he's here because he wants to talk to the gods, and this museum has an old Egyptian temple that honors a bunch of them, so he's just kind of hedging his bets here. And he comes down and he's like, dear Osiris and Iris and all the other Isises, help me out, man. I need your help. There's flooding and my dad's hurt and I need to know what to do. I have no idea how to handle Anubis here. And he gets no response and he's just like, man, this is ridiculous. Helmet, what am I supposed to do? And the helmet's like, heal the world, man. And then all of a sudden he goes in like this trippy drug trip sort of looking thing and he talks to Nabu. And Nabu's like, look, you get the helmet, it gives you the powers. You don't get the wisdom of Thoth through all that. However, I may be able to help you. I can try to help you along in your journey. And he basically says, look, you can control the powers of nature. That's what fate does. The winds, the fires, the water, lightning, all that stuff. You can use their elemental fuel to control them, or it's only going to be as strong as your will. It's not going to be something that is just going to bend to you. You have to want that. And he's like, yeah, well, I tried that with the jet plane, and that didn't really work out that well. And it's just like, okay, well, you just got to try harder. That's the best I can really give you here. You got to do that. And he's like, no, this isn't for me. I'm not a hero. I'm just a kid. I don't know what to do. And he's like, yes. And as a kid, you are more open to new experiences. So, look, here's how it's going to play out. Either you're going to stop Anubis and you're going to be able to save your world, and Anubis will go back and lick his wounds and like, congratulations, you've saved the day for a while. Or the world gets flooded and the gods will still continue on. Like, another civilization will be built. We actually don't care. We're just giving you the option here to try to make things better. So go for it. You just got to be stronger than a god. And then all of a sudden he zaps back. But however, he zaps back to seemingly ancient Egypt as the pyramids are still being built. And he's on the back of the Sphinx and he's like, okay, I got too many drugs in my system. Apparently this is messed up. And then all of a sudden the Sphinx is like, hey, did you want some wisdom? Because I'm a Sphinx. I'm all about wisdom. It's just like, oh my God, you're alive? It's like, yeah, I'm alive. But like, don't waste questions for the Sphinx on the obvious. So Fate's just like, look, I didn't ask for this. I just want my family to be okay. It's tell me what I got to do. And the Sphinx is like, look, Bastet picked you to have the helmet. Bastet's not exactly the wisest, but you do have this royal blood in your veins. So like, that's something at the very least. Anyway, let me tell you my riddle. And the Sphinx is like, oh wait, or sorry, not the Sphinx. Dr. Fate's like, oh, I know this riddle. It's man with the 4 legs, 3 legs, 2 legs thing. And it's like, yeah, no, that's one of my favorites. But that's not the riddle. The riddle is, you as Fate can control the elements and whatnot. However, in order to defeat a god, you need to be in their place of greatest power, and you must pay a price equal to what the god is looking for. And immediately Khalid's like, he doesn't want the helmet, because I don't even want the helmet. I would gladly give him the helmet, and that's not going to cure anything. So what? I have to give him the drowning of the world to make him happy? That seems counterproductive. And the Sphinx is like, it's a riddle. Figure it out. So Khalid ends back up in the museum, and he's like, all right, well, I got to get home. I've spent too much time here already. Maybe I can catch the train. And he's like, well, you know what? Maybe I'll just fly. Whatever. I'll give it a shot. So he starts flying across Central Park, and he sees a fire erupting. He thinks it's Anubis. Turns out it's just a normal car accident that has caught on fire. And he's like, well, tangentially, it's Anubis because it's related to all this rain. So he jumps down. He just pushes some cars out of the way, gets a guy out of burning one. He immediately runs like a medical thing where he's like, oh, well, he's still breathing. He has a regular pulse. We can get the EMTs here. They'll take care of him. But first I got to put out this fire. And so he flies up and he's like, they said I could control the rain. Let me test that out. And so he angles it down at the car, takes it out. And all the bystanders are like, who the hell are you, man? He's like, don't worry about it. Just keep that man safe. Bye. And so he flies off. And it was like, Anyone get that on their phone? So as Khalid's walking his way home, he kind of thinks on the idea that he doesn't really have a religion. He's not someone who's super faithful because his mom was Christian and she kind of just fell away from that. She never really enforced it. And his dad is Muslim, but he is not Muslim enough to have a problem with marrying a white Christian girl. So clearly this is not something that's super near and dear to him. But as he walks by a mosque, he's like, I mean, do I just pray? Like, is that the main thing here? Do I really have to like believe in gods for this to work out? And all of a sudden he gets the voicemail from his dad, which ends up being like a visual because of the fate powers. He sees his dad's face coming out of the phone, and he's like, "Son, you got to listen to me. That voice I heard in my cab that when I went blind, I recognized it. It's the voice of the jackal I heard the night my father died. You got to be careful out there, son. There's some crazy evil stuff going on." And Khalid's like, "Okay, yeah, I get the message. Fair enough." And he comes to the conclusion that God helps those who help themselves. So he's like, all right, well, I guess I just need to figure out what to do next. That's the main thing here, but I actually have to work for it. It's not going to be handed to me. And as he's walking down the street, a black cat pops out, calls his name, and says that fate calls you. So who's the black cat? Who knows? It's not the strongest issue we've had of this series, but it is still very good. I like the fact that this Anubis arc, like I said, I felt like it kind of reached a stable point last issue where it felt like, okay, we did 3 issues of him saying, I can't be fate, I can't be fate, I can't be fate, and like not even believing that it's even happening. Now he believes it's happening, but he's still like, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know what to do next. And that is different from the idea of not believing in the powers at all. So there is this slow build to it where it feels like we are going to get a very good payoff where he's like, I can do this, I know how to, and he executes it however it needs to be. So all in all, I'm into the story. I like the characters thus far. My only little criticism is one that comes down with a lot of books that seem to be writing for the trade more than individual issues. They need to say the characters' names more. I would not known Shia's name if it weren't for a single speech bubble where he says Shia, and it only comes on page like 5. So you got to throw that stuff in a little bit more often. But beyond that, it's fine. It's a great issue. So I'm going to say this one is I'll say an easy 7.5 and move on from there. Martian Manhunter number 4, written by Rob Williams, art by Eddie Barrows. So last issue we had the Martian Man-Eater coming in to attack Agent Daryl Wessel, and then Mr. Biscuit showed up and says like, hey, I'm John Jones, Martian Manhunter, and so are you. And this is where it all just starts falling apart. So we open up with, I guess, a flashback to Daryl. He's just sitting on the steps, drinking a coffee, doing some people watching. He's like, yeah, you know, when you're a cop, you just kind of people watch. Maybe it's like subconsciously looking for a crime or whatever, but like maybe you're just looking for someone to save. And then as he's watching this crowd, he sees just this old man with red glowing eyes and this horrific smile. And Daryl just like stops drinking his coffee. And he's like, oh my God, how many of them are living among us? They want us to tear each other apart. And we see the steps you're sitting on is actually the steps to Congress. So theming. We then cut over to Pearl, who was that other woman who was in the Middle East, escaped one of the white Martians there. Turns out she's been on a ship for a while, and the shipmates have been taking like care of her, making sure she's all good. But now the ship is being attacked by pirates. And they're like, we don't have any weapons. You gotta go. You gotta get out of here. Try to get to safety. We see that she does end up throwing some kicks, doing what she can to fight against the pirates. But at least the image of Martian Manhunter, of John Jones, shows up and is like, hey, you need to get off the ship immediately. And she's like, hey, you're the voice in my head that told me to jump. And she's like, yeah, and you're still alive. You're welcome. And now you need to get out of here because the ocean and all of its rough waviness is more safe than trying to fight against these pirates because they ain't human. And Pearl's like, what do you mean they're not human? And we see the pirates are coming up behind her. They turn into white Martians. And she's like, oh, I've heard that noise before in my dreams and my nightmares. I can't move. And Martian Manhunter says to, like, you are so much more than you have ever imagined a Pearl. You can be a weapon if that's what you want. And we see that she turns around and just drop kicks a Martian straight through the chest. It manages to, like, morph around her and traps her leg, and the white Martians are like, I'm going, you're just a piece of the larger whole, but I'm going to enjoy ripping your consciousness from your life meat. And Pearl's like, oh, okay, that's great. And Martian Manhunter says, you can use, like, a telepathic explosion in their internal intestinal systems. And so she concentrates and their heads explode. And John is like, that was their heads. You do know there's a difference, right? And she's like, yeah, well, I don't know what I'm doing, so whatever. And we see a bunch more white Martians are coming in. And I'll admit I don't fully know what's happening here. John yells, Martian grenade, and then all of a sudden she's blasted through a wall. Not like the wall explodes. She phases through it and is thrown out towards the ocean. And as she's drowning there, we cut back to the Mr. Biscuits fight on top of the ambulance. Daryl Russell's driving. Alicia's in the front seat. And Alicia's like, where are we going? What are we doing? And Mr. Biscuit says, take us to the airport, Mr. Driver. Thank you. And Mr. Biscuits is talking to Agent Wessel, and Daryl's just mind has been broken. He's not sure. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm Martian Manhunter. How can we both be Martian Manhunter? And Leo, the sociopath kid in the backseat, is like, you're still thinking in human terms. I mean, you are neither human. None of you are. And he's just kind of like trying to get into Daryl's head when Mr. Biscuit says, all right, time for some karate. And he strikes a pose, and then his arm falls off. And he's like, ah, crap, I like that arm. And then all of a sudden we get a different art style. I'm not even sure if this is Eddie Barrows at this point. It looks very similar, but it's a very different style. He's back on Mars. He looks up and he sees Phobos, the Martian moon, which apparently has a giant crater on one side that resembles a big mouth. And he's like, all right, well, that could be a future archenemy if it one day got sentience, but that's unlikely. Also, right, I'm fighting a white Martian, and this is all just a psychic dream. This is all just something that is being forced on me. And he gets cut in half in the psychic dream, and he's like, oh, good thing this isn't real. And then he comes back to reality, and he's like, oh, wait, no, I have been cut in half. That's actually quite the problem. So Daryl tells Alicia to take the wheel, so he gets up with his gun, starts taking shots at the Martian man-eater. Mr. Biscuits drops down in front of Leo. And Leo's like, how interesting. I suppose you're his subconscious, right? And Mr. Biscuits is like, I don't know. Maybe he just really likes biscuits. Leo, I can't read you psychically. That's really weird. And Leo's like, I know. Isn't that strange? So Alicia is driving this ambulance now. She is about to collide with a gas tanker, to which point Daryl says, dear God, look out. And in being distracted, he's stabbed through the chest by the Martian man-eater. And we see that the truck starts to, like, it explodes, at least in his mind, and he's like, we're all going to die here in the impact. That girl, she's going to die. She's just 10 years old. She is someone that I can save. And so we see that despite being stabbed through the chest, he just phases. It comes out the side of him. He then telekinetically lifts up the ambulance and all of the people inside of it over top of the tanker and sets them back down on the other side. And then he uses his telekinesis to phase the Martian man-eater into the ambulance and then reduces its speed so that it just falls onto the ground. And he also does something to separate it back into its component white Martians. And he gets back in the driver's seat, takes it from Alicia, and she's like, oh, thank you, you saved us. And he's just like sweating profusely, totally like PTSD from all that. And she's like, you're welcome. She's like, you still look sad. You're still alive. There's no need to be sad. And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm not alive. That's not what's happening. And we cut back over to Pearl, who's in the ocean. And he's thinking, like, I can hear a voice from the dark, like an echo from someone far, far away. And we see that as Pearl is choking out, in comes Aquaman. Aquaman's there. Aquaman's just here to save Pearl. So we then cut over to Mars. Or I should say we cut over to two guys looking through a telescope at Mars. And they're just having some banter with each other about how the names of the moons, Phobos and Deimos, translate to fear and dread. So one of them comments that whoever named them was going through an emo phase. And then they look up, one of the guys looks up and is just like, wait a minute, hold on, Phobos, it's gone. And it's like, no, it's not gone. You must have nudged the telescope or something. It's like, no. The other one's still there. Phobos ain't there anymore. And he looks up and he manages to catch it in the telescope again. He's like, Phobos is moving. And we see that mouth that they were talking about before, the big crater, is an actual mouth. It sprouts teeth and it just beelines it over to Earth, colliding into the side. And we end with an Arthur C. Clarke quote of, two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. I like it. I think this is actually a very solid issue. I hesitate to say that it's really forwarding the plot. It is, but the plot is so esoteric. It's so wildly convoluted. I don't know if this is going to end with Martian Manhunter having to become basically Voltron and getting all the pieces of them together in order to reform. Is this going to end with them all sacrificing themselves and then defeating the big bad? I don't know what the plot here is, so I can't say if we're moving towards that or not. But from a character perspective and from a definition of all these different aspects of Mr. Biscuits, how is Leo playing into this? I didn't think Leo was a part of it, but apparently he is. Alicia being a part of this, and I just really think that it's working across the board. Add in the fact that this moon of Phobos, I've always had a soft spot for when people can take a real life thing that's a weird coincidence and then turn it into a plot point. It's something that's always a little bit interesting for me. And to say that this moon has a big mouth on it and then you make it a giant mouthed creature, it works. So I'm going to say this one's easily an 8. I think the art style is great. The writing is solid. Don't really have any major issues with it. So definitely looking forward to seeing where it goes. Bizarro number 4, written by Heath Corson, art by Gustavo Duarte, with a tiny bit of guest art by Darwin Cook. So, last issue we had Bizarro and Jimmy helping Chastity Hex take out a bounty in this ghost town, and then they were on their way to Branson, Missouri in order to cash in on the bounty. We see that Bizarro and Jimmy stopped in at a fortune teller briefly, just for a single page, which basically is just a catching the reader up, letting them know what all is going on here. But the fortune teller does manage to almost spill the beans that Jimmy is only doing this to write his coffee table book and cash in on Bizarro. So they bounce out of there, and Jimmy's like, I hate magic. There's no rules to it. Doesn't make any sense. And Bizarro's like, I love magic. It's fantastic. Here, give me a coin. And Bizarro's like, all right, now pay attention. And he just crushes the coin in his head and it turns to dust. And Jimmy's like, great, fantastic, thank you. So they're waiting up for Chastity to come out with the bounty, and then all of a sudden Jimmy gets a phone call about the book deal, and he's like, no, I'm glad this is on the table. I'm happy to make whatever deals we can. We'll be back in a few days, all that. So at that point, Chastity shows back up and is like, all right, well, here's your half of the bounty. Happy to help you up. You guys want to stick around or whatever? And Jimmy's like, yeah, no, I might be able to stick around in town at least for a little bit. We can catch a show or something. To which immediately Bizarro goes and finds the Darwin Cook art, which is a giant poster of Zatanna, who apparently has a show in town. So we then cut over to the show, and Jimmy's got a little angel and devil on his shoulder, and the angel's just like, you know what, magic show's not your favorite, but at least Bizarro's happy. And then the devil's just like, yeah, think about how much money you're going to make off of him. So we see, as Zatanna is performing her magic act, she's of course using her backwards magic words, and Bizarro's like, wait a minute, hold on, I actually really understand this stuff. And Jimmy's like, what are you talking about? It's gibberish. It doesn't make any sense. So she asks for a volunteer from the audience. Bizarro just leaps up there, gets into a magic box, to which point he says magic words backwards that say Bizarro disappears, to which a portal opens up and drops him into the Rock of Eternity, where the wizard's like, wait a minute, hold up, what are you doing here? You're not my champion, get out of here. And so another portal opens up and we see Zatanna on stage has chainsawed the box in half, to which Jimmy's like, wow, all right, that is pretty impressive. So we follow Bizarro as he's portaling through all these different dimensions. He goes to Gem World, the House of Mystery, a diner in the third circle of hell, and the Parliament of Trees. And then he ends up for a panel in Skitaris, Warlords thing, where he's fighting a dinosaur. And we cut over to Jimmy, who's backstage in Zatanna's dressing room. It's just like, hey, hi, you called up my friend in order to disappear. And she's like, oh, yeah, thanks. It was no big deal if you want to know how the trick works. And he's like, no, I'd like to know where my friend is, though, because he hasn't come back. And she's like, I'm sorry, what? So she goes out on stage, discovers there's some weird magic thing going on there, some portals or whatever, and it's very complex magic. She doesn't remember doing it, to which Bizarro then steps out dressed in a tux saying, hey, Jimmy, I can do magic now. And he's like, no, you can't. Shut up, Bizarro. And then all of a sudden he tries to say the appear doves thing. A bunch of bees come out instead, to which Zatanna blasts away being like, okay, clearly you can do some magic, but it is very powerful stuff and it is not for you to meddle with. To which Bizarro says, excuse me, I'm happy with this. I really like it. I want to continue. And Jimmy and Zatanna both try to shut him down. But before Zatanna can do anything, Bizarro takes away Zatanna's magic, says no more magic for Zatanna. To which point she's like, wait a minute, hold on. You're ridiculously powerful in this, and I don't understand why. And then all of a sudden, a giant dinosaur head pops out from a curtain, to which Bizarro just poofs it away. And Zatanna's like, okay, look, this isn't funny, because I first off, I lost my magic, but second off, I'm being shown up by Bizarro, and that's just not okay. And there's been a thing going on throughout this issue, I guess I forgot to mention, where Bizarro's been misusing the word misconstrue. And Jimmy keeps on telling him, like, that's not how you use it. That's not the right word, whatever. So Jimmy tells Bizarro, give the magic back. And he says, I like magic. Why are you always misconstruing me? And as Jimmy chews him out one more time, Bizarro uses it into the magic words and tells Jimmy that, construe him. To which point, Jimmy and Bizarro switch. So we now have Jim-Zarro, which is a Bizarro version of Jimmy, and then just normal version of Bizarro, who I guess at that point would be Clark Kent. And they both wait, hold on, what's going on now? And Bizarro's talking normally, Jimmy's talking in backwards speech. And then Jimmy opens his shirt, has a Jim-Zarro logo, and just immediately goes to take off saying, me, go take pictures. So as he's speaking backwards, normal Bizarro's like, I'm sorry, is that how I usually talk? Jesus, that's so annoying. So Jimmy goes around town trying to take pictures, but he doesn't like the setup. He doesn't like the decorations of the town. So he goes around and starts, I don't know if these are things that are in just Branson, Missouri, but he picks up half of the Titanic and says, I'm just going to move this for the picture. And here's this Hollywood wax museum. I'm moving all that. And Bizarro looks over to Stanton and is just like, hey, look, I know this is my fault, but neither of us have access to the magic now because I can't wrap my words around the backwards words anymore. What are we going to do? And just just let him take his pictures and come back. He'll be fine. But then as he lifts up the wax museum, Zatanna lets slip that this town of Branson, Missouri is on a bunch of ley lines. So if he keeps on tearing up all these buildings and whatnot, it's going to cause enough chaos that it's going to disrupt all the magic in the whole world. So Zatanna runs off. She's like, I got a friend. He can maybe help. You just hold down the fort. And a car is almost dropped onto Bizarro, and he's pushed out of the way by this woman named Lorna Bismucci. She's an MMA fighter, and Bizarro introduced himself as Bizzato. Biz, and then he just says Otto. And she's like, oh, that's weird. That's Italian or something. And he's like, I guess, sure, whatever. And she looks up, sees Jim-Zarro flying around. He's like, do you know that guy? And he's like, no, I have no idea who that guy is. And you are extremely attractive. And she's like, haha, thanks. So they keep on trying to move through, trying to limit the destruction as much as humanly possible. And basically, Lorna's like, hey, we should get dinner sometime. It's nice to meet a normal guy. And he's like, me? Normal? Oh, sure, of course. So Jimmy goes, he's about to pick up one more picture. He's like, this is the last one, and then I'm going to take the picture. But if he does that, he's going to destroy the entire town. So Bizarro grabs hold of Jimmy and just like, hey, look, it's been a whole thing where I haven't been able to understand you, and that's frustrating and all that stuff. And they basically just have like a Freaky Friday moment where it's like, oh, Jimmy recognizes that it's difficult for Bizarro to be understood because he's always saying the opposite stuff, and Bizarro recognizes that Jimmy is a little bit annoyed because of all the chaos that Bizarro causes. And we finally get him held in place because of Deadman. That's the friend that Zatanna called in, just being like, hey, yeah, I stopped him. He's brought down now. You can Freaky Friday back or whatever. And as they come to the moment of understanding, they switch back places again. They share a nice big hug. And Zatanna also gets her magic back because it's the end of the issue. I mean, she gets her magic back. So at that point, we see Lorna looking around, trying to find out what happened to Otto. And Jimmy's like, hey, do you want to maybe, like, it's okay? And Bizarro's like, nah, we should get back on the road. And by the way, you mentioned during your Jimzaro thing that you were writing a book. What's that all about? And then all of a sudden they're attached by the government agents from Argus that we saw like 3 issues ago. And they hold them at gunpoint, and Jimmy's like, okay, well, what do you want from us? And he's like, well, on top of you having an Omega level alien just here for no reason whatsoever, we also need your help to break into Area 51. So I guess that's the next issue. I like it. It's a fun little issue. It gives more depth into Jimmy and Bizarro's friendship. It's fun the whole way around. I like the connection of Bizarro being able to do backwards magic well. It's not something I ever really considered because, of course, Bizarro's speech is not really the same as backwards magic, but it works. Like, it's actually pretty clever on the part of Heath Corson, so kudos to that. Beyond that, I think that this issue pretty solidly is like 7.5. I really enjoyed it the whole way through. I wouldn't say it's like an amazing issue, but it's very, very good. Doomed number 4, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Javier Fernandez. So last issue, we got the tease that the Star Labs Titans, whatever you want to call them, from over in Teen Titans, consisting of Wonder Girl, Power Girl, and Kid Flash, have shown up, and they are ready to fight Doomed. This issue, it seems like Scott Lobdell was just like, I don't actually know how to write Power Girl or Kid Flash anymore, so it's just Wonder Girl. So we open up with Now, where Wonder Girl's just beating the ever-loving piss out of Doomed, just kicking him around town, and he's like, I don't understand how she can be so strong, but like, my God, this is absolutely destructive for me, because I cannot communicate, I cannot say, hey, please don't punch me, I'm a normal guy under the monster. It's just, she's railing into me for no reason here. And we see that as she stays in this form, there is this rage building inside of him where he's like, no, like, I am doing everything I can to not fight back, but a big part of me wants to just obliterate her. And he says, okay, how do we get here? And we cut back to half an hour earlier where we see he is bringing home the little dog that we left off the last issue with, because he went looking for the dog. He's bringing home the dog to his aunt, and she's not wearing her glasses. Despite, the glasses get knocked off. My bad. I was going to say, they're definitely in this panel. But she picks up the dog, glasses get knocked off, and she's like, Riser, is that you? Get me my glasses, please. But Riser runs off and doesn't let her see him because he's like, oh, who am I kidding? I can't be anywhere near her. To protect her, I have to be far away because monster like me is always going to be danger. And so we see he lands at a theme park. He works on the jumping around and leaping huge distances for a while. And he's like, okay, let me just concentrate. Let me just have a quiet place to just concentrate for a little bit. I can turn back into normal me. And then as he sits there for a second, he just starts panicking. He's like, what if this is forever? What do I tell my friends and my family? Like, they're going to, I can't live a normal life. I can't have roommates. Do I just hope that one day I find a girl who can see past the red, scaly exterior? I mean, who am I even kidding? They're going to do experiments on me. My coworkers are going to do extra credit on my internal organs. It's going to be horrible. And he gets so angry, he does like a big energy blast that blows off. And he basically says, like, the worst of it all is it's my fault. I did this to myself. Why did I take off my suit? It almost feels like that was the dumbest thing I could have possibly done. And he ends up passing out. And then in walks Clarice, who, I'll be honest, I can barely remember which one Clarice is. I think Clarice is the one who brought him down into the Lex Tower and like kind of almost hooked up with him. She comes in and starts whispering some magic mumbo jumbo in his ear and then says, "We need you, Riser, the world needs you." And he transforms back into Riser. He turns back into a human. And as he wakes up, he's like, "Wait a minute, I recognize that perfume. That's Clarice. No, that's crazy. That's silly. Why would Clarice be here? But anyway, I'm human again. That's neat." And then we cut over to Star Labs, and we see Wonder Girl's beating up a bunch of robot drones or whatever for training purposes. And they're like, "Why are you beating? Those aren't training drones. You're just beating up a bunch of robots." And she's like, "Whatever, I don't care. Also, what happened to my team?" And they're like, "Don't worry about that. They won't be in the book. Anyway, we need you to take care of this monster thing that we saw loose in the city. We have a few theories on how we're going to crack it." And this is like, "Whatever, I don't care. I'm just going to go out there and punch it. It's no big deal." And we see who I believe is the other girl, the one who like was supposed to be in the room when Riser gets infected. She sees Wonder Girl there and it's just like, "Oh, is this just a coincidence that she's here?" So then we cut back to Riser, who's just looking for some clothes. He's in like a completely rundown and abandoned building, finds something. So it's like, "Oh God, this smells awful." But like, I need to figure out like the Hulk problem of what clothes can I wear that won't immediately be shredded as soon as I turn into the monster form. And then the moment that he takes the moment to just like breathe for a second, in comes Wonder Girl, which startles him enough that he transforms again. And he's like, "Okay, well, that sucks. I just got back and I shredded this shirt. This is awful." So Wonder Girl shows up just being like, "Hey, you're going down, monster." And he tries to say, "Wait, no, don't do it. I'm a big fan." And he just comes out as growl. So she starts throwing punches. We pick up with where we started the issue with. And we see, as he is about to get punched again, he ends up doing one of his big wave things, the bioblast he calls it, pushes her away into a concrete pillar, which ends up, because they're in this funhouse sort of area, brings down this giant Ferris wheel looking thing. And Wonder Girl doesn't seem to notice it, but he starts sprinting towards her as fast as possible. And she's like, "Wait a minute, you don't look angry, you look panicked. Why is that?" And we see that he's running forward to catch the Ferris wheel and stop it from landing on her. To which she's like, Did you just save me? And he goes, "Grah." So she gets up, she runs out from under the Ferris wheel. Riser's like, "Yeah, okay, thank you. I'll just be here holding this thing up. It's so cool of you." And then we see that she was actually running out so she could use her lasso, her rope or whatever, to pull him out and get him to safety. And in doing so, turns him back into Riser, normal form, also naked, to which she points out, "Why are you naked?" And he says, "Long story." And he proceeds to tell her the long story, literally everything that happened, because he's like, "You're the first super person I've met, and I feel like I can trust you with that at least." So she's like, "Okay, so I keep you wrapped up in my lasso because we don't know whether or not that's going to turn you back. I personally don't care because I'll smack you down if you turn into a monster. So we cool?" And he's like, "I guess." And so she takes off the lasso and he doesn't turn back. And he's like, "Oh, okay, well, I guess it was just not feeling threatened anymore. So that's neat." And he's like, "All right, well, look, thanks for listening to me, but I guess I should turn myself into Star Labs because, like, I'm a monster. I deserve to be there." And she's like, "Nobody remembers my story arc from Scott Lobdell's Teen Titans, but like I had the silent armor, which makes me kind of monstrous in my own right because of blah blah, who cares? Point being is that we're two sides of the same coin, Riser, and I don't think you should turn yourself in because you gotta own this thing. You gotta make it your own and you can save people using your powers. Anyway, I'm leaving. Don't mention that I let you go or that we ever met up. Okay, great, bye." She kisses him on the forehead and leaves. And Riser's just like, I've got just a tiny glimmer of hope because of her. Thank God. So then we cut back over to Star Labs, or maybe it's not Star Labs, maybe it's, I don't know. So it turns out that Jane is looking into the clean room and is like, "Oh no, The last thing in there were the Doomsday spores. That means the Riser could be infected with Doomsday. How could it get any worse? And then standing in the room with her, all of a sudden, is Superman saying, hey, Jane, we need to talk. So Superman's here, and he's in his t-shirt and jeans, and he's, post-identity reveal, all that stuff. It's okay. It's honestly, this book has been, I don't want to say growing on me, because I would drop it at a moment's notice if I could, but it's been getting better in that I don't feel like it's the normal Scott Lobdell affair, if that makes any sense. It feels like it's actually trying to take this character and develop it in a way that's not just stupid little jokes constantly, or constantly making pop culture references, stuff like that. This one does actually feel like we've set up this character and we have something that we're going to do of looks can be deceiving, that kind of vibe. I'm okay with that. That's fine. And it feels like it's trying to move down that path. My problem with it being is that it is not moving forward enough. Here's the bit that really gets me that they have yet to explain. Is that, okay, he can't talk. Fair enough. He also looks like a monster, so when he gets thrown around a little bit, people are going to keep wailing on him. Why has he not just, thrown up his hands and, laid down on the ground? And I know there's the thing of, the bioblast or, an automatic thing or whatever, but, surely if your physical form is showing that you are, completely submitting, they'd stop beating you up. So I understand it would just ruin the story, but, these are very basic things, and I don't feel like they're ever really accomplished of it. I guess my bigger overall problem here is it feels like Riser does a lot of complaining, but he doesn't actually think at all as to how to actually do something like that. And for someone who has a Star Labs internship, I kind of just expect him to be smarter than that. So, yeah, I'm going to say it's a 6.5. It's still on an upward trajectory. I mean, I might have given the last one a 7. I don't know. But it's on an upward trajectory. I just don't think I expect it to nail the landing. So we'll see what happens when we get there. And that's it. That is all the comics that were put out by DC Comics this September 16th, 2015. And like I said at the top, I don't want to keep this episode going too much longer here, so I'll probably just wrap this one up quick. However, for anybody watching the video version of this, you may notice I figured out my lighting. That's neat. Be proud of me. It took me a while. It took me far longer than it probably should have to figure out how to set up a slightly diffuse daylight style light. So yeah. Anyway, next week, we have a very light week. I am so happy for that. Only 9 comics coming out. Those 9 comics are in alphabetical order: Batgirl, Deathstroke, Flash, Gotham by Midnight, Grayson, Harley Quinn / Power Girl, Justice League 3001, Sinestro, and We Are Robin. Not going to say it. God, every single time I end on that, they write good jingles, but I'm not going to do it. Anyway, that really is it for me. Thank you very much for watching. I'll go ahead and do the contractual stuff. Hey, if you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation, we have a comment section down beneath this video. But if you don't have access to a YouTube account for whatever reason, we have multiple other things, such as a Discord, a subreddit, and a Patreon, all of which are linked either on screen or in show notes / descriptions. So, yeah, thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week, and always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.